Good afternoon, and a warm welcome to you to this live proceeding of the Senate afternoon sitting on this 8th day of August, the year 2024. The Senate proceedings are streaming live from the Parliament buildings in Nairobi, and this live broadcast is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in partnership with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. In the order of business for the members of the Senate this afternoon, pursuant to the House Standing Order number 52, paragraph 1, this is with regards to Senators' general statements. The Honorable nominated Senator Karen Nyamu is set to make a statement concerning the rise of cyberbullying in Kenya. And pursuant to the House Standing Order number 53, paragraph 1, this is with regards to Senators' request for statements from various House Standing Committee, is that the Honorable nominated Senator Karen Nyamu will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Health regarding measures put in place to curb the spread of monkeypox, commonly referred to as mpox, in the country. Pursuant to the same standing order, the Honorable Senator for Embu County, Senator Alexander Mundigi, will be also seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources regarding operations at the Land Registry Office in Embu Town, Embu County. The Honorable Senator for Bomet County also, Senator Wakili Hilary Sigei, will also be seeking a statement this afternoon from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources. This is with regard to abandoned water projects in Bomet County. The same senator, that is the Senator for Bomet County, Honorable Wakili Hilary Sigei, will also be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries regarding stalled and abandoned agricultural infrastructural projects in Bomet County. And the Senator for Meru County, who's also the Deputy Speaker of the Senate, Kathuri Murungi, will also be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Health concerning the state of health services in Meru County following the health workers' industrial strike. But as you can see, that is the Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Lamason Jeffa Kingi, making his way into the chambers. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast brought to you by PBU in partnership with KBC. Good afternoon.
Let us pray. Mwenyezi Mungu, tukusihi tutazame kwa neema nyingi na baraka sisi watumishi wako ambao umeridhika kujitoa kwa nyadhifa za uongozi katika jamhuri hii yetu. Tukuomba utujalie tuyatende na kufikia mambo yote atakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. We have quorum. Club, do you have quorum? We don't. All right. Sergeant at Arms, ring the quorum bell for 10 minutes.
Clearly, we can see, or you can see, that the House does not have the required number of members inside it, that is the chambers. And that is what has necessitated that particular quorum bell. Members will be walking in as provided for in the House Standing Order number 40 once the prayer has been said and chair taken. And if there is no quorum, then a 10-minute quorum bell will be rung. Of course, this is to give room to the members to make their way inside the chambers. And that is what we will be seeing. Like we have just seen the Honorable Senator, that is the majority leader, also the Senator for Narok, just made their way into the chambers. So we will be seeing more senators. There is the Senator Eddie Okech, also the Honorable Senator for Kakamega, who is also the majority whip. Honorable Boni Halwale also seated inside the chambers. The quorum has been achieved. Allow me to hand you over to the live broadcast.
Number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Chairperson, Standing Committee on Energy. Proceed to lay your paper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of this Senate today, 8th of August, 2024, being the report of the Standing Committee on Energy on its inquiry into the liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, explosion in Muradi area, Embakasi, Nairobi City. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order, clerk.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Senator Professor Margaret Kamar. The order is dropped. Chairperson, Standing Committee on Energy. Dr. Boni. Give notice to your motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give notice to the following motion, that the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Energy on its inquiry into the liquefied petroleum gas LPG explosion in Miradi area, Embakasi, Nairobi City County, laid on the table of the Senate on Thursday the 8th, 2024. And Mr. Speaker, sir, my apologies, I didn't hear you call me out.
Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Statement pursuant to Standing Order 52-1, Honorable Senator Karen Nyamu. That order is dropped. Request for statements pursuant to Standing Order 53-1, the Honorable Senator Karen Nyamu. The order is dropped. The Honorable Senator Alexander Mundigi.
Request for statement. Mr. Speaker, sir, request for statement on the operations of the Land Registry Office in Embu Town, Embu County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources regarding operations at the Land Registry Office in Embu Town, Embu County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I arise of the residents of Embu County have repeatedly contacted my office with the complaint that the Land Registry Office in Embu Town, Embu County has not been rendering effective service. The office is understaffed with only 2 officers who are assigned to be rarely available, those rendering the registry inactive. In the statement the committee should 1. Explain why the Land Registry Office in Embu Town, Embu County is understaffed, dispute the high demand for service from the residents. 2. State plans, if any, by the government to address the lengthy by the officers working in this office, and if there are any plans to deploy more officers to the registry to enhance service delivery. Senator Mudigi, Embu County.
Senator Wakili Hilary Sigei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Senator Sigei, I request for a statement on stalled and abandoned infrastructure projects in Bomet County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources regarding stalled and or abandoned infrastructure projects in Bomet County. Mr. Speaker, several incomplete and abandoned infrastructure projects in Bomet County represent a significant waste of public resources and have been deprived the residents of Bomet of services benefits they rightfully deserve. I would like to highlight specific projects that remained incomplete or abandoned for between 3 to 10 years, leading to substantial waste of public resources. Project number 1 is Danai Dam Water Project in Danai and Boswand. 2 are our net water projects in Masese, Singoret, Wand. Bodet, our net water project in Bodet, Merigi, Wand. Oinopset water project in Kapsimbili, Merigi, Wand. Ondieki water project, water spring in Kiprenji, Kembu, Wand. Chebangang water project in Chebangang, Kimrot, Wand. And Skutiet water project in Chesoen, Wand. In the statement, the committee should state reasons why each project has stalled, been abandoned, remained incomplete, or is underutilized, and outline the measures and timelines for their anticipated completion or utilization. 2, indicate the individual budgetary allocations, expenditures through payments made to the respective contractors, and any pending payments. 3, table the minutes of the tender warrants, copies of tender advertisements, and tender evaluation reports for each listed project. And 4, provide the bill of quantities for each project and their current implementation status or development stage, signed by Senator Wakili Hilary Sigei, MP, Senator from Bomet County. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kathuri Murungi, the Senator for Meru. Senator Chiranke. And Senator Chiranke, you know you cannot have audience because you've got some substantiations to make. So proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I request for your indulgence after you directed that I substantiate on 2 issues. On the status of repair, after the issue of insurance, the status of repair, on the issue of after the invasion to Parliament, Mr. Speaker, and secondly was on the issue of installation of security system within Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I did write to the Director General of Parliamentary Joint Services under Article 35 and 34, and I still request for indulgence to get the information to firm up my substantiation when we resume from the sitting. Mr. Speaker, with a lot of indulgence, since the Director General is here to add me more information to firm it up, I request and I beg for your indulgence so that when we resume from recess, I'll be able to give a solid and a substantive response to the House. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, with your indulgence, sorry, I can table the letter that has been received in furtherance of my further clarification.
Can I look at that later? Thank you. Can I look that later before I give directions? Senator Chirange, your request has been granted. You will substantiate upon resumption after this short recess. Now, I had called the Senator for Meru, Senator Kathuri Murungi. Any senator holding his brief? Okay, then that statement is dropped. We'll now proceed to the statement pursuant to Standing Order 57-1, the Senate Majority Leader. Senate Majority Leader.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 57-1 to hereby present the business of the Senate for the week commencing Tuesday, the 3rd of September 2024. Mr. Speaker, sir, and I'm not very sure how accurate this statement is, Mr. Speaker, in light of some breaking news that I have just seen as I was walking into the chamber. I am more than certain, Mr. Speaker, that despite my statement stating that we'll be back here on the 3rd of September, I know for a fact that there is business that is by statutory demand that we must conduct in the next 7 days. Should you receive a certain letter, which I suspect Senator Kathuri has gone for. That's why it's not in the House. Be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, we senators are aware that in accordance with the calendar for the 3rd session, at the rise of the House today, the Senate will proceed on recess until 3rd of September, barring that letter that I've just pointed to, and also the fact, Mr. Speaker, that you know presently the Inspector General of Police is being vetted by both our committees on national security. And I suspect that that report may be ready way in advance. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, there is very likely, there is a likelihood, Mr. Speaker, that this actually might be interrupted. Mr. Speaker, a major hallmark...
Senator Eddie, what is your point of order? I thought this is rather procedural for the Senate Majority Leader to give an update on business of the House.
Mr. Speaker, standing orders of this House do not allow us to anticipate any debate. And I can see that the Senate majority is anticipating some debate that it keeps on quoting, because now I'm confused on this procedural motion that is moving.
Senator Eddie, thank God you've stated your problem. You're confused. Have a seat. Proceed.
That is unfair. I must defend Senator Eddie. A major hallmark of Part 3 of the Senate calendar has been the passage of resolution of the current state of the nation. In the resolution, Mr. Speaker, a motion that was debated here for the longest time, I think a motion has spent on the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker, for 5 straight days uninterrupted. Members shared their thoughts on what needs to happen in this republic. Mr. Speaker, we had 2 or 3 things that we requested as a House, and the House resolved, one of which was to send the resolutions that Senate passed to both the leader of Azimio, the Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga, and to President William Ruto. That, I can confirm, was done. What I'm not sure, Mr. Speaker, is whether our various committee chairpersons have begun work on the resolutions that were passed by this House, Mr. Speaker. There is specific work that we gave to the Budget and Finance Committee, to Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, to Cohesion. Senator Chute is here, and I don't know which other committee. Mr. Speaker, and I think Security and Foreign Relations, yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd be very perturbed if our chairpersons do not respect even our own resolutions. It is my sincere hope...
Senator Chirange, have your seat. You're out of order. You're contravening Standing Order 117. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, you know Senator Cherargei is smartly dressed today, and I am sure this is not from Toy Market, which he claimed he shops from. Mr. Speaker. A major hallmark of Part 2 of the Senate calendar, Mr. Speaker, were the resolutions that we gave to the various committees. And therefore, it is my sincere hope, Mr. Speaker, that these chairpersons will actually comply with the resolutions of the House. Mr. Speaker, with respect to the business of the Senate, the status of legislative business is as follows. There are 54 bills that are pending conclusion in the Senate, of which 42 are actually at the second reading. And while 12 are at the committee of the whole stage. There are 21 motions that are pending conclusion, 20 petitions that are due for reporting by the respective standing committees, 390 Agnes Kavindu, and final will be question number 88 to CS John Buddy from Senator Joyce Korir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the business for that week on the 4th of September, the afternoon sitting will include business that will not have been concluded in the order paper for Tuesday, the 3rd of September, 2024. There are various bills that are at the second reading stage, Mr. Speaker, and I need not mention because a good number of them are actually before this House and members know. There are bills that are at the committee of the whole stage, which include the Houses of Parliament bicameral relations bill, Mr. Speaker, before you release funds to any of this county. And you know, PFM, I think Regulation 19 or 18, permits that the controller of budget actually enforces the implementation of budget.
Calling for industrial strike. The people of Meru are under imminent apprehension that the industrial strike may be prolonged as the parties involved have not shown any signs of conciliation to end the standoff. In the statement, the committee should, state whether there are any immediate interventions to ensure that the health workers resume their duties to avoid cases of loss of lives and financial strain, as the people of Meru have been left with no other option but to seek health services from private health facilities. And 2, finally, explain whether the county government of Meru has initiated any progress to implement the negotiated agreements between the county and the workers' union, and whether there are long-term plans to end the perpetual and perennial industrial strikes that have for a long time denied the people of Meru their constitutional right to attain to attainable standards of health. So, Speaker, on behalf of Senator Katuri Murungi, Senator for Meru and Deputy Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with your indulgence, my 2 statements, request for statement on brutalization of peaceful demonstrators by armed gang in Kapsabet town. Mr. Speaker, sir, I raise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations regarding brutalization of peaceful demonstrators by an armed gang in Kapsabet town. Mr. Speaker, sir, on Tuesday, 6th August 2024, the residents of Nandi County took to the streets of Kapsabet town in exercise of their constitutional right to demonstrate, seeking audience with the governor of the county to address concerning regarding accountability and transparency in county governance, as well as lack of development in the entire county. Regrettably, Mr. Speaker, sir, the residents were brutalized by a gang armed with crude weapons and batons who purported to protecting the business from the demonstrators, and 3 people were injured and 1 lost the motorbike, Mr. Speaker. I therefore request the committee to, 1, explain the circumstances under which the armed gang was able to roam freely and brutalize residents in Kapsabet town on Tuesday, 6th August 2024. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, outline any disciplinary actions taken by the police officers and Nandi County security personnel who either deliberately or by negligence permitted the acts of lawlessness within the town. So, Speaker, number 3, state the number and names of individuals who have been arrested and arraigned in court for disrupting peace, maiming and violently mugging peaceful residents who are going about their business within Kapsabet town and within Kapsabet town on the said date, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, outline any steps taken to bring to book all other individuals who are responsible for recruiting and financing this armed militia gang within Kapsabet town. Mr. Speaker, my second statement Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that was the only one. Thank you.
Senator Christola Sige.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labour and Social Welfare regarding the performance of Team Kenya at the 2024 Summer Olympic Games in Paris, France. In this statement, the committee should assess the performance of Team Kenya at the 2024 Summer Olympics Games that's fallen short of expectations in Paris, France, outlining any planned strategic changes by the government to improve our overall performance of our teams in future. 2, clarify whether sports psychologists, sports nutritionists, as well as strength and conditioning coaches were part of the complementive supportive staff that traveled with Team Kenya to the Olympic Games, and if not, explain why. And finally, outline any measures put in place to address mental health needs of the team whilst participating in the current and future Olympic Games. Thank you.
Senator Wakili Hilary Sigei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Senator Sigei, I would like to request for a statement on stalled and abandoned agricultural infrastructure projects in Bomet County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries regarding stalled or abandoned infrastructure projects in Bomet County. Mr. Speaker, several incomplete and abandoned agricultural infrastructure projects in Bomet County represent a significant waste of public resources and have deprived the residents of Bomet of services and benefits they rightfully deserve. I would like to highlight specific projects that have remained incomplete or abandoned for between 3 to 10 years, leading to substantial waste of public resources. Meneti Buying Center in Kembu, Mogido Potato Factory in Daraweta Ward, Chemomul Tea Buying Center in Chesowen Ward, Chemiriot Tea Buying Center, Chesowen Ward, Morit Tea Buying Center, Chesowen Ward, Kipsonoi Tea Buying Center, Kipsonoi Ward, Mengwet Hesto, Congo Sis Ward. In the statement, the committee should, 1, state reason why each project has stalled, been abandoned, or made incomplete, or is underutilized, and outline the measures and timelines for their anticipated completion and stroke utilization. 2, indicate the individual budgetary allocation expenditures payments made to the respective contractors and any pending payments. 3, table the minutes of the tender awards, copies of tender advertisement, and tender evaluation reports for each listed project. And 4, provide the bill of quantity for each project and their current implementation status or development stage. Signed by Senator Wakili Hilary Sigei, MP, Senator for Bomet County. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mwenda Gataya, Mofire. That statement is dropped. Now, the floor is open for purposes of contributing to the statements that have been requested. Senator Mohamed Chute.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Let me first of all take this opportunity to thank or congratulate the CSS who are sworn in today. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, the majority leader has spoken about the issue that he raised. I want to notify him that as Chair, National Cohesion Equal Opportunity, we've already invited PPRA, Public Procurement Regulatory Authority, today, and we had a meeting with the National Cohesion and Integration Commission today. We've invited Public Service Commission. They've asked for more time. Coming back to the issue of the statements, Honorable Speaker, I want to contribute to the statement by Senator Kaduri. Honorable Speaker, we have a problem in this country, mainly health issues. Honorable Speaker, in Marsabit, health workers were not paid for almost 5 months. Interns were not paid for almost 6 months, up to 7 months, some of them. Honorable Speaker, last week, a lady called me from Marsabit. There is a hospital in Moyale. She visited that hospital. She was given a list for an inpatient that she was supposed to be admitted in that hospital. Honorable Speaker, she was given a list to bring water bucket, a soap, bar of soap, her own bed sheet, slippers, pillowcase, syringes, surgical gloves, and mattresses, Honorable Speaker. In some instances, a patient will be asked to bring water to that hospital or clinic, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to urge this Senate to visit hospitals. If we can, we need to ask the committee, the health committee, to organize a program that they can have a program to visit hospitals, Honorable Speaker. Because, let me give you an example. About 2 weeks ago, Marsabit Hospital, people are demonstrating, the staff. And if the staffs are demonstrating because they have not been paid salary, what will happen to the patients, Honorable Speaker? Honorable Speaker, I want to give you an example. November 2023, salary was released by COB for Marsabit Hospital, for Marsabit County, 264 million. That money has not been paid, the salary has not been paid for November 2023. I brought that statement and I got a response from COB that the money has been dispatched, and if they have not paid, that is a question the governor should be asked. Honorable Speaker, we have a problem in our counties. I want to support this issue of pending bills. Honorable Speaker, we need to do something about pending bills. The people who are suffering out there are Kenyans. Some of them have borrowed money. Some of them have even sold their properties. And you can find somebody going to hospitals not because he is sick. It's because of depression, Honorable Speaker. I want to thank Senator Narok for bringing this issue to the floor of the House. And the motion he has brought must be dealt with, as you said, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, finally, we need to have a conversation on what is supposed to be done to the counties. Honorable Speaker, this morning we had an opportunity to have Director General of PPRA before us, and he told us there is a big problem in both counties and even national government on procurement issues. That is why we are having pending bills. Honorable Speaker, pending bills, you see, when they come and source for money, the money that is supposed to go to a particular contractor or supplier is diverted in between somewhere. Honorable Speaker, we need to have a conversation on, this is a Senate that can curtail those counties. Honorable Speaker, finally, let me request this House, let's take this matter of counties, specifically hospitals, very seriously. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Before I call the next speaker, there are two statements that I will allow, being the last day before we break off for the session. Senator Cherangaya, you may proceed.
One, provide details of all the unsold tea currently being kept at Mombasa Tea Market or auction. Number two, state the reasons that led to over 20 million kilograms of tea to remain unsold for several months after delivery, stating its freshness level. Number three, Mr. Speaker, explain the details of the stored tea in terms of the number of farmers affected across the country, indicating total cost of warehousing accrued and who will pay for the storage. Number four, Mr. Speaker, state the impact in pricing of the tea auction in Mombasa caused by accumulation of unsold fresh tea. And finally, Mr. Speaker, what actions have Tea Board of Kenya, TBK, and Kenya Tea Development Authority, KTDA, taken to mitigate on the problem and ensure farmers get their pay without delay? Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
We go back to the floor of the House. Senator Betsiengo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity also to support the statement by Senator from Meru County, our Deputy Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the previous speaker has already indicated, Senator for Marsabit, we have a big problem in this country concerning healthcare services. But before I come to that, Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to thank the President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Dr. Samoei William Ruto, for overseeing today the swearing in of the broad-based government. And Mr. Speaker, allow me to declare that it is the beginning of the solving of many problems in this country. I can declare without fear of contradiction that from today we are heading to the right direction and we are going to get a new Kenya. There are issues, of course, to be sorted out from this moment, but the longest journey, Mr. Speaker, starts with a single step. And that step has been taken today. Back to the statement, Mr. Speaker. Healthcare services requires serious thought in this country. We cannot have a sick nation. We need healthcare service providers to be paid, the system to be managed well. This problem is not only in Meru County, but also in other counties, including where I come from, Kitui County, Nairobi County, and all the other counties in this nation. The issues of demoralized healthcare workers is a serious thorn in the flesh. We need healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, physicians, all of them, to be well paid, to live in good environment, to be taken care of, and to be appreciated for that special service that they offer to the citizens of this nation. Unemployment of qualified health workers, Mr. Speaker, makes our qualified, very good brains move from our country to seek for greener pastures elsewhere, and we are lacking the same that we require in this nation, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to say, as a recommendation, for the new CS of Health who was sworn in today, I hope she would take a bold step and initiate a process of having or to establish a health commission. Because I am encouraged that with a health commission, many issues affecting our health workers in the counties will be sorted out. We'll have an energetic health worker team, and things will be sorted out, and we'll have a healthy nation by having qualified, good, encouraging health service providers in this nation. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Senate Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I'll try and be real quick. Number one, this issue of tea raised by Senator Gerard Gay, we share partly in the blame as the Senate. For about 3 months now, the tea bill has been at the committee of the whole stage. And I want to say this, Mr. Speaker, with the chairpersons of Agriculture Committee here, so that they know that the tea farmers are looking up to this House to resolve their issues. If we cannot find time, Mr. Speaker, to consider a bill that is at the third reading for 3 good months, Mr. Speaker, then what other business do we have in this House? I want to plead that the chairperson of Agriculture takes this matter with the seriousness that it deserves, treats it better than we have treated the tea amendment bill by Senator Wakili Hilary Sigei, so that either they visit Mombasa and establish the truth about these unsold stocks of tea, Mr. Speaker, so that this House can be properly guided. And finally, is to come up with a long-lasting solution because the issue is that I don't know whether there's a scientific connection, Mr. Speaker, between countries that have got political hardships and consumption of tea. Because many of our traditional markets, from Iran to Pakistan to Sudan, Mr. Speaker, and now Bangladesh, these are amongst the largest consumers of our black CTC tea that we produce in this country, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, when there are political upheavals in that country, markets are affected, and we have this challenge like what is being experienced in Mombasa. Therefore, the country must be guided on how to establish new markets, Mr. Speaker, for our tea so that our farmers can continue earning from their sweat. Lastly, in just under a minute, Mr. Speaker, is to agree with Senator Crystal Asige. The performance of Team Kenya at the Paris Olympics, Mr. Speaker, has been nothing short of heartbreaking. As a fan of athletics, Mr. Speaker, I do not recall a time that we have performed as dismally as we have done in these Olympics. I know there are a few races that are yet to be concluded, but it broke my heart, Mr. Speaker, to see, and at the risk of sounding racist, to see Kenya lose the 3,000 steeplechase, 1,500, races that we have previously dominated and have come to be associated, actually, Mr. Speaker, with Kenya as a republic. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, the new Cabinet Secretary for Sports, Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, has his work properly cut out, Mr. Speaker. We must guide the country in the proper direction. The truth of the matter, whether we like it or not, is that science has caught up with talent. While many of our athletes are talented and therefore can make do despite our disorganization, the science of running, where athletes come into this country, they study, they train with us in E10, then they disappear in January, back to their country now to practice for the final race at the Olympic time, Mr. Speaker, is that those people have learned how to do this art, even despite them not being as talented as our athletes, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we must as well come up with better solutions on how to manage our athletes, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the final thing, Mr. Speaker, is it even starts with how we treat these athletes. You saw what happened with Team Kenya, part of our athletes. Forget about how they arrived here. You should ask the athletes how they travel. Many of them long connecting flights, Mr. Speaker, tired, not paid in due time, Mr. Speaker. I hope this will be things of the past. Therefore, I agree with Senator Crystal Asige that we must get to the bottom of this matter, Mr. Speaker, and reclaim our space as the world's leading athletic and sporting powerhouse. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Eddie Okech.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. I think I first of all want to really support the statement by Senator Crystal Asige. Mr. Speaker, the mantra in sports is that success in sport is 1% talent and 99% perspiration. And Mr. Speaker, I like the idea that the majority leader has put in place that science has indeed caught up with talent. I think this is a big learning for us, that we must be able to actually appreciate that we are not investing so much on the perspiration side of this success. We're not investing in the right science. We're not investing in the right, areas that we need to invest in, and we're just waiting for our sportsmen and women to depend purely on talent. But more than that, Mr. Speaker, I also think that the evil of corruption has bedeviled our sports industry, Mr. Speaker. It is always very heartbreaking when you see, your own playing for the other team and, succeeding very well. For instance, the young lady who won the steeplechase for Bahrain, Mr. Speaker, a serious Kenyan who has been denied opportunities to be able to perform for Kenya just because of simple corruption issues, Mr. Speaker. These are issues that I hope that the next CS is going to address in the ministry and be able to allow true talent to get the opportunity that they deserve. And extending this issue of opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to the conversation that has been brought to the floor of this House by the wonderful Senator for Nandi, Senator Cherargei. on the issue, and I call him wonderful because for the first time I've seen him standing very strongly with the Gen Zs, Mr. Speaker, because he has brought a very eminent issue of Gen Zs who go to the street to protest, and then whether organically or through some dubious means, some people organize to go and attack those young people in the streets, Mr. Speaker, in Nandi, is not a phenomenon that we have only seen in Nandi. We have seen this phenomenon in Migori County, we have seen this phenomenon in Nairobi County, and we are seeing it becoming a serious pattern of attacking protesters and pitting Kenyans against Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. This cannot continue. We cannot sit as leaders and then we see people who come to the street to express themselves, to show their discontent, and then we devise a means of having Kenyans fight among themselves in the streets. It cannot happen. What I would want us to appreciate as a country, though, is that even if in the mind of some leaders that seems like a temporary solution, Mr. Speaker, we must focus on medium and long-term solution, which has made young people agitated in this country. And that problem, and I hope that the majority leader, because he's also a young man in this house, can actually be able to listen to this, is that the problem that young people are facing in this country is an economic problem, and we must devise a proper solution towards it. And with the naming and confirmation of the current CSS, Mr. Speaker, I hope that they will recognize that we shall not know peace in this country if young people in this country are still wallowing in the miasma of economic disenfranchisement, Mr. Speaker. And it's very important, Mr. Speaker, that the ministers who have taken charge of this country now must start a proper engagement with areas that can be able to create economic opportunity for young people. As I finish, Mr. Speaker, you know there's been this phenomenon of sometimes exporting labor and sending young people outside the country. I saw the other day the Prime CS, flagging off about 167 young people who are going to be teachers outside the country, Mr. Speaker. There are serious industries in this country, Mr. Speaker, that I hope that the executive would listen carefully to this and start budgeting for those areas so that they are not excluded on the basis of tribal or regional budgeting that denies some areas opportunity that can be able to create employment for those areas. One of those areas that I'm very keen on, Mr. Speaker, as I saw the former governor of Mombasa, currently the CS of mining and blue economies being sworn in, is, for instance, the Lake region, Mr. Speaker. If you look at Lake Victoria, where I happen to come from, Mr. Speaker, the immense potential in that area, Mr. Speaker, is something that hasn't been tapped, Mr. Speaker. As we speak right now, the country is facing a serious shortage of fish, Mr. Speaker. The market for fish in this country is 600 million metric tons, Mr. Speaker. And yet, what we have in the country currently is only 200 million metric tons, out of which 80% is only allowed as a wild catch and 20% is what people are growing in terms of fish caging, Mr. Speaker. If you look at the two companies that are in Lake Victoria today that are doing proper stocking of fish and fish farming, Mr. Speaker, you'll find that one of them is American. It's called Victoria Farms, Mr. Speaker. They are doing wonderful farming in that region, but even yet they are not able to scratch the surface. That farm alone employs 1,000 young people, Mr. Speaker. You can't compare. You can't compare. Gaspi Africa has done research in Lake Victoria and has shown that the lake on the side of Kenya alone can be able to produce up to 400 metric tons, Mr. Speaker, which is a market of 120 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker. Yet, in the country today, we are struggling to raise 145 billion, which is what we have cut in national budget in terms of physical consolidation. Rio Fish, that is also trying in Lake Victoria, Mr. Speaker, is now employing over 40 young people directly and 200 young people directly, Mr. Speaker. So, as I finish, Mr. Speaker, I want to say categorically that young people in this country will not be leaving streets anytime soon if we are not deliberate about solving the economic problems of young people in this country. As long as young people are hungry, as long as young people don't have jobs, as long as young people don't have income, Mr. Speaker, they will still go to the streets. So I want to call upon the CSS that have gotten the jobs today, starting from my very good friend, Honorable CS Mbadi, and CS, my friend CS Wandai. It is time that you go there as experts and make sure that you're able to dissect the economy and put in place projects that can be able to allow young people to get jobs in this country. With that, Mr. Speaker, I thank you so much, and I hope that we will look at the issue of economic empowerment of young people in this country. Thank you.
Senator Veronica.
Honorable Speaker, thank you for this opportunity, and I want to support, first of all, the statement by Senator Asige on the performance of the athletes who are in Paris, Mr. Speaker. In this country, Mr. Speaker, we have a bulging population of the youth. If there is one sector that can be an answer to the current issues, the emerging issues that need to be resolved, it is the sports sector, Mr. Speaker. And the sooner that the ministry calls every county into account on what they are doing with sports, Mr. Speaker, and art skills and other skills, Mr. Speaker, that would impact on the lives and transformation of young people, the better it will be for our nation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if we look at the national budget and how much is being divested towards dealing with sports and such activities, Mr. Speaker, it will tell us the much concentration and the attention that is being given to that sector, Mr. Speaker. We have seen a lot of efforts in the management of sports, and I have seen even the enactment of anti-doping laws, Mr. Speaker, which appears to be a commitment towards bettering that industry. But, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, the way sports are being managed, Mr. Speaker, especially the athletics, Mr. Speaker, has left a lot to be desired. We have certain officials who have refused to move out of the offices, Mr. Speaker. They seem not to have a timeline within which they should serve and exit and allow other officials to come in, Mr. Speaker. Could that be one of the issues that is ailing the sports management in Kenya, Mr. Speaker? If that be the case, as this statement is being committed to the relevant committee, Mr. Speaker, it is the high time we reassessed where as a nation, where our focus is in relation to the youth, Mr. Speaker. This is one industry, this is one ministry, Mr. Speaker, that can respond adequately to the needs of the youth, Mr. Speaker. We have a lot of talent in Kenya, Mr. Speaker, among the young people, be it in football, basketball. When we were in Kigali last year, Mr. Speaker, we saw the kind of a stadium that has been built by Rwanda, Mr. Speaker. What stops our nation from building such stadiums, Mr. Speaker? Indeed, Mr. Speaker, both the private sector and public sector should be dedicated and committing to developing this sector, Mr. Speaker, because it worries every Kenyan a lot, Mr. Speaker, when a contractor has been given a stadium and they do a very shoddy job, such that we have to go to Kigali, we have to go to Rwanda to learn the kind of a stadium that another nation, which is just in our neighboring, Mr. Speaker, a much smaller nation than the Republic of Kenya, has put up a stadium which attracts international occupation, Mr. Speaker, and international use, Mr. Speaker. Why do we have this kind of contractors doing this? Do they not also have mercy for Kenya? Mr. Speaker, actually, the private sector will have to reassess how they are engaging also with government. They should engage with a lot of integrity when it comes to the kind of procurement processes that are being done, the level of work, the quality of work. They should start becoming proud of delivering to Kenyans something that is equivalent to the kind of public resources that are being utilized for this procurement, Mr. Speaker. And if we are dedicated to give a good percentage of the national budget towards such a ministry, Mr. Speaker, nothing stops this nation from having enough engagement of youths and youths feeling that we are giving focus to them, Mr. Speaker. We are also very concerned, Mr. Speaker, about the tea that has been grounded at the auction in Mombasa, Mr. Speaker. For very many years in Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, tea and coffee has always had market. Indeed, our tea happens to be among the best products in the whole world over, Mr. Speaker. Kenyan tea is used to blend every other tea in many, many nations, Mr. Speaker. We are some of the biggest suppliers to of tea to Egypt, Mr. Speaker. Even the Pakistani tea does not beat Kenyan tea, Mr. Speaker. And if you want to know the quality of tea from Kenya, just go to United States of America and order for a cup of tea. You will wonder whether that is tea or coffee that you are drinking. Because the only tea that can effectively blend any tea to become tasty tea, it is only tea from the Republic of Kenya. So, Mr. Speaker, it then becomes very worrying that we have stocks of tea stuck in the auction in Mombasa. And whatever is happening needs to be resolved. And the Agriculture Committee must look into that issue very urgently, because the number of farmers who are waiting for that auction to unlock, Mr. Speaker, will be so many, and it will cause many peasant farmers to continue increasing the poverty index as opposed to reducing it, Mr. Speaker. And with those few remarks, I support that statement on the tea that is which has halted in Mombasa, the tea auction, Mr. Speaker, that has gone wrong, and I hope that the committees will render solutions to the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kinyua.
Asante Bwana Spika kunipa fursa hii. Kwanzia mwanzo Bwana Spika, nataka kusema ya kwamba Mswahili anasema kipitacho rohoni kinapaswa kuonekana usoni. Na Seneta Shiengo vile alivyosema kuhusu Rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya, yeye anaonyesha kwa vitendo, kwa sababu nikimwangalia Bwana Spika, ninaona amevalia kofia ya chama cha kinachoongoza. Nikiangalia hata mkoba wake Bwana Spika, nakwambia ya kwamba
Senator Kinyua, if you have nothing to contribute on the statements that have been read, please give a chance to your colleagues.
No, Mr. Speaker, I am contributing.
Okay.
I'm contributing. Mr. Speaker, the good lady talked about what the good president is doing. Mr. Speaker, I'm in order to see what I'm saying. Mr. Speaker, kwa taarifa ambayo imeletwa
refer to your colleague as the honorable senator. We don't have good ladies, we don't have good gentlemen here. Proceed.
Okay. Asante Bwana Speaker. Bwana Spika, naunga mkono taarifa iliyoletwa na seneta wa kutoka Meru, Gathuri. Bwana Spika, kuna mikataba kila wakati ambayo inaandikwa katika gatuzi zetu. Mikataba ambayo ni madaktari na gatuzi zetu kuhusu vile ambavyo matibabu yatakuwa yakielekezwa. Bwana Spika, mikataba hii ni kana kwamba haina faida ya kukamilishwa, ama wale ambao wanaandika hii mikataba hawana haja ya kukamilisha. Ndipo unapata kila wakati Bwana Spika kuna migomo katika hospitali zetu. Wananchi wa gatuzi zetu wanafanya vile ambavyo inapaswa Bwana Spika. Unapata mtu amekata ile kadi ya NHIF, lakini akienda hospitali Bwana Spika hakuna dawa. Kwa hivyo kile ni cha manufaa Bwana Spika, nikiunga mkono taarifa hiyo. Ni sengine inafika wakati nakisia vile ambavyo wananchi wa Kenya wengi wanavyosema, wanaona ni vizuri afya ama matibabu irudishwe katika serikali kubwa na Spika, kwa sababu gatuzi zetu zimezembea katika kazi yake. Muhula uliopita Bwana Spika, kaunti ya Laikipia madaktari walikuwa wamegoma wote. Kaunti ya Kirinyaga madaktari walikuwa wamegoma. Bwana Spika, hakuna kitu kinaonekana kinaendelea, kwa sababu ukiandikiwa dawa katika hospitali zetu, nimesikiza Chuti akisema unaenda hospitali Bwana Spika, unaambiwa uje na maji, unaambiwa uje na sindano, kila kitu uje nacho. Ni kama hospitali yenyewe ni nyumba tu, wewe unapaswa kuja na kila kitu Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, waziri ambao tayari sasa ameteuliwa na ako katika ile kazi. Na Bwana Spika, jenzi walisema ya kwamba kunapaswa kuteuliwe mtu aliye na uzoefu Bwana Spika katika wizara aliyoteuliwa. Sasa tumemteua daktari ambaye ana uzoefu sasa. Bwana Spika, sasa tunataka kutumuone Daktari Baraza akifanya ile kazi ambayo ameteuliwa kuifanya, ndio angalau wa Kenya wapate afueni Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, kuna taarifa ambayo imeletwa na Asige Bwana Spika. Nilitazama mashindano pale Paris, Kenya wakikimbia. Bwana Spika, nilikuwa nikitazama nikiona huyu msichana ambaye anaitwa Yavi ambaye baadaye nilijua ametoka Makueni, bwana Spika, nilitarajia kwa vile ambavyo niliangalia, lakini baadaye bwana Spika nikiangalia katika mitandao ninaona ya kwamba anasema ya kwamba kisa na maana ya yeye kukua hakuweza kukimbia akiwakilisha nchi yetu ni ya kwamba aliitishwa zaidi ya 200,000 bwana Spika. Pesa kama hizi hawezi akazipata bwana Spika. Lakini anasema ya kwamba hata baada ya ufisadi ulioko katika wizara bwana Spika, yeye alijikakamua na akaweza kuingia katika nchi ile. Bwana Spika, mimi ninajua ya kwamba Kipchumba Murkomen ambaye tumekuwa na yeye hapa, kwa sababu sasa amepatiwa hiyo wizara, najua atawajibika bwana Spika na atatuletea, kwa sababu bwana Spika nilitazama nikiona ya kwamba sisi tutaenda kufuzu. Hakuna mbio ambazo bwana Spika, mbio ambazo tumekuwa kila wakati tukifuzu. Bwana Spika, niliona wakimbiaji wa Kenya bwana Spika wakipitwa na wale ambao watu singe kisia hata wangetushinda bwana Spika. Nilidhania wale watu wangetushinda katika ndoto bwana Spika, lakini sasa ilikuwa ikitendeka. Kwa hivyo waziri ambao wamechaguliwa, waziri wa afya bwana Spika na waziri wa michezo Kipchumba Murkomen, kazi tayari wako nazo, na tayari akianza kazi bwana Spika ana kazi chunguzima ambazo anapaswa kuzingatia. Bwana Spika, nikimaliza nataka kumrudishia Senator Shengo shukrani kwa yale ambayo amefanya, na tunamwambia heko na uendelee vivyo hivyo, kwa sababu umoja ni nguvu, utengano ni udhaifu. Asante bwana Spika.
Senator Sifuna.
Honorable Speaker, in that very same breath, allow me to support the statement that has been issued by Senator Cherargei. Honorable Speaker, you know, in my other capacity, I'm the SG of ODM, a party that has suffered the brunt of some of the things that Senator Cherargei is referring to. Mr. Speaker, there was a very public confession one time by the former Senator of Nairobi, the Honorable Mike Sonko, on what they used to do in order to paint the ODM party as a violent party whenever we would want to exercise our rights under Article 37. And Mr. Speaker, he revealed then this culture of people hiring goons in order to disrupt peaceful protests, or even to paint the peaceful protests as anything other than peaceful protests. I was very alarmed, Honorable Speaker, to see the scenes in Kapsabet. I saw the same scenes in Kakamega, and I have seen the same scenes here in Nairobi. Honorable Speaker, it is very worrying. I do not understand why you need to interfere with anybody's peaceful protest. There are 7 days in a week. If Sifuna wants to protest on Monday, you can very well pick Tuesday to show support or something against what I stand for. Honorable Speaker, what is even more worrying is that this happens in the full glare of the police and the security forces in this country. It is very disturbing, Honorable Speaker, that if the Constitution requires that anybody proceeding in a street, in a public space, should be unarmed, how can police just look at a group of people armed, openly armed, with rungus, with clubs, with other things, walking around in order to scare other people from exercising their rights under Article 37? Honorable Speaker, we must condemn this, and I am happy that even Senator Cherargei has gotten to a place where he can agree with the SG of ODM that this is not right and it needs to stop. Honorable Speaker, that's what I'm saying. I am very happy. So I want to support him and say that nobody should fetter on any other person's right to peacefully protest. It doesn't matter what your cause is. I don't have to agree with your cause. If I don't agree with your cause, let me sit at home and wait for the causes that I agree with to take me to the streets. But it is very unfair. And Honorable Speaker, although I have heard people sing praises about the cabinet secretaries that have been appointed, I was a bit disappointed with the cabinet secretaries that were reappointed, especially in the security sector, because I personally don't believe that we are going to see any change in philosophy. Honorable Speaker, we need to see police reforms. We need to be able to secure these rights under the Constitution. If the same brains are the ones that were present when we were seeing goons in Kapsabet and in Kakamega, what expectation do we have really that there's something that is going to change? So, Honorable Speaker, I want to say this, and I want to say this as a senator of Nairobi. I will never judge anyone going to the streets for any cause, because I have been there myself. We have pushed for many things that are being pushed for even by the Gen Zs right now. And it is within their right. So for the police to allow people to interfere with them, Honorable Speaker, for me here in Nairobi, People just see me these days. They don't know how much I've suffered. Honorable Speaker, there was a phenomenon here in Nairobi called Nairobi Business Community. Those people, Honorable Speaker, used to scare us so that we cannot go to the streets. And I don't see them anymore. I don't know if their business is closed. I don't see them anymore. They used to be deployed specifically for Maandamano that is championed by ODM and the opposition. Honorable Speaker, we even saw sometimes you would hire a ground like Uhuru Park, and then a conflict arises out of nowhere. You hear there was supposed to be a crusade here by some obscure bishop, just so that you do not have that meeting at that particular point. So, as a staunch defender of the rights under Article 37, I want to fully associate myself with the statement that has been sought, and we need to bring those security chiefs here, especially the CS, the reinvented CS for security, internal security. I want to hear him tell us what he's going to do about this specter of people mobilizing goons in order to dissuade other people from participating in peaceful protests. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, on the statement that has been sought by Senator Crystal Asige, I do not know what Kenyans expected, because the output is as good as the input. The truth of the matter is that we are a country on the we are on a downward trajectory when it comes to everything to do with sports in this country, because we have not invested in sports, Honorable Speaker. When Senator Veronica Maina talks about the stadium that has been built in Rwanda, do you know, Honorable Speaker, that the last meaningful national stadium or international stadium that was built in this country were built by President Moi? They were built by President Moi. Successive regimes since Moi built as Nyayo Stadium and built as the stadium in Kasarani. We have never done a structure to that level. Honorable Speaker, just a few months ago, I was here on this floor complaining that we football fans missed a critical fixture between Harambee Stars and the African champions Cote d'Ivoire because it had to be played in Malawi. It was very embarrassing, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this afternoon before I came to the House, I was watching the final of the national secondary schools soccer game between Highway Secondary and my alma mater, Musingu High School. Of course, I was very conflicted because I am the senator of Nairobi, but I also went to Musingu High School, and I want to congratulate Highway for their victory. I will be going to the school to see them later, Honorable Speaker. But the thing that I noticed from this year's games and even last year's games that were in Kakamega is that there is a yearning for sports in this country, and there is excellence in the grassroots. Buhungu Stadium last year hosted these games, and it was packed to the brim. The same as Gusii Stadium during this year's games. What is it that happens between talent at the grassroots and them being able to make it all the way to the national stage and even international stage? You had the story of the runner from Makueni, Honorable Speaker. We have frustrated our own people, and I cannot begrudge anybody who will want to go and look for opportunity elsewhere for as long as you are able to express your talent. Honorable Speaker, to this effect, I want to beg members of this House, I have sponsored a motion, a bill, to amend the Sports Act, because the Sports Act, Honorable Speaker, initially was supposed to bring some sort of cure to some of the problems we have identified. We were supposed to build academies in all the constituencies to support sporting activities at that level. It has never been done, because immediately those who were in power then saw how much money was actually being realized in the sports fund out of sports betting, Honorable Speaker. They decided to introduce things that have nothing to do with sports. On application of the fund, they introduced this thing of using money for universal health care. Honorable Speaker, that is where the problem is. I have sponsored an amendment. It was read for the first time here yesterday, Honorable Speaker, to the Sports Act, that each county must set aside at least 1% of the money this Senate gives them to support registered sporting associations. And this thing was triggered, this idea was triggered by an experience I've had, and I'm sure every member in this House has had. Every time the Nairobi Boxing Association has a tournament in Kirinyaga, in Vihiga, they come to my office asking me to support them with mundane things such as just transport to the venue. They have no money to hire training halls. They have no money to pay referees. So we want at least 1% of the money that this Senate sends to be set aside to support these sporting associations, because we believe that at that particular level, Honorable Speaker, we should be able to support them so that they come up. And lastly, Honorable Speaker, I think if we don't deal with the question of corruption and favoritism in even selection of the national teams, I think we are doing this country a disservice. You go and watch these games, at the grassroots, you watch grassroots football, you watch the high school games, you can see a player, a midfielder who can receive a pass, put his head up, look for somewhere to pass the ball, and that person just disappears within the system. You go to Nyayo Stadium to watch Harambee Stars and you're wondering, a guy cannot even make one pass, Honorable Speaker, and is playing for Harambee Stars. We used to have very low standards when we used to go to Nyayo Stadium. We say, we don't want to score. Can we just see 3 good passes and go home happy? Honorable Speaker, the bar has been set so low. So we need to see what is it that happens when these national coaches are selecting people. There is allegations of favoritism. And the most frustrating thing is you cannot even touch the management of football in this country. Because immediately we say we want to disband FKF and have fresh elections. They run to their daddy in Switzerland. Honorable Speaker, you get a call from Switzerland telling you, if you interfere with the current management, we are going to ban Kenya for X number of years. It is very frustrating for us, especially soccer fans who know there is talent in this country that just goes to waste. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, for allowing me to comment.
Senator Olekina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me begin by appreciating the statement by Senator Gerald Gay. In the last parliament, I sat in this very house and we passed the T bill. And at first, I was a bit concerned that maybe we are redoing it again. But I've just been informed that that bill that we passed here did not pass the National Assembly because the time of the election was nearby. Mr. Speaker, it saddens me when I hear that we have tea which is stored in Mombasa. I know very well that the demand for tea, Kenyan tea around the world, is steadily increasing. I know very well that Pakistan leads in the import, which is actually very good for our FX. They spend almost $520 million importing tea from this country. I know very well that the UK also follows. They import about, I think they spend about $111 million. Egypt spends about about $300 million importing tea. I'm baffled, Mr. Speaker, because earlier this year, I saw the Deputy President launching a strategy for the tea sector. And there were stories of a big warehouse costing over $3 billion being built to store the tea. And that shocked me because I've always known that the tea industry, the reason why the auction was set in Mombasa is because whenever the auction has been done there, tea was not stored there. Tea was just going out of the country. So I think it is imperative that the new Cabinet Secretary in charge of Agriculture should actually look at this issue. And the committee should look at what the previous Cabinet Secretary did. Because I remember the previous Cabinet Secretary, former Senator Linturi, went to Pakistan, had bilateral talks with the Pakistan government in terms of increasing the uptake of tea from this country. So what happened? So instead of just picking up from here and moving on, we should look at what happened so that it advises our future. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the issue of legislation, I hope that when we pass this tea bill this time around, it is not going to be reactional. And then next time again, because of certain specific interest, we now again come with other amendments. Let us now exhaust any form of amendment so that we can be able to make laws which will be able to stay and, live in this world for the rest of God's creation. Mr. Speaker, secondly, on this issue of sports, I've listened keenly to the contribution made by my colleagues. And the one that strikes me is the one that was brought about by Senator Sifuna, where he is suggesting that each county should set aside 1%. I believe if we really want to improve the sports sector in this country, this Senate should now bring in a motion to set up a conditional grant. Because it becomes very difficult to go and tell the governor of Nandi or the MCAs of Nandi that set aside 1% of your budget to be able to do what? To improve on sport. The best thing we can be able to do, just like we passed a motion for a sports complex in Mombasa, to set up, we have a conditional grants, which are ring-fenced. And then, once we have done that, Mr. Speaker, it is important for us to remind ourselves of our sovereignty power. This issue of depending on the West so much for every decision we make. I was sitting in this house when we were looking at reports on FKA. And Sifuna is right. Senator Sifuna is right. At that time, it was very difficult for us to bring in any changes. So once we have our own funds and we build our own, we nurture our own talent, we can actually be able to go very far. We have experts. In Narrow County, Mr. Speaker, we have Billy Conchella. Billy Conchella was one of the, he set the world record in 800 meters. I think it was just broken recently by Rudisha, who is also from Kilgoris. So I think if we tap into the resource of these legends who have played, who have demonstrated to the world that, yes, in Kenya, we have great men and women who can be able to, to run, ensure endurance, we can actually be able to go very far. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I want to remind my colleague, the distinguished Senator Beth Siango, that the moment we now start praising the executive is the moment we fail. No wonder, Mr. Speaker, today, if you go on social media, you will find two lawyers who Senator Sifuna said is going to give direct tickets to be able to run for office, opining, their negative views of the Senate. They are saying we've become sort of like flower girls and boys for the executive. I want to remind us that we are here to check the executive. We're not here to start saying, oh, thank you, President, for swearing in our colleagues from our political party. Let us be reminded that we are here as Parliament to be able to oversight the executive. We are not here to become an extension of the executive. I completely detest that, Mr. Speaker. And I want to remind my dear sister, the distinguished Senator Beth Shianko, that...
What is your point of order, Senator Chirange?
Mr. Speaker, understanding under 101, there is what we call responsibility of facts. Mr. Speaker, is it in order for the minority whip in this House, seated next to SG of ODM, when ODM Central Committee sat under the leadership of our brother and the next AU chairman, Baba Raila Odinga, and resolved to work with the government, is he challenging the position of ODM Central Committee? That resolution was there, Mr. Speaker. Can he table, Mr. Speaker, can he table the evidence to the same?
Senator Chirange, you're totally out of order. Have a seat and allow Senator Olekina to conclude his intervention.
Mr. Speaker, I'm in this House to ensure that we respect the separation of powers. I'm in this House to ensure that we respect the rule of law and the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, when I was sitting here, and I'm going to now deviate from advising my sister, I sat here and I received a supplementary order paper. And in the supplementary order paper, order number 8, Mr. Speaker, talks about amending the division of revenue. Mr. Speaker, I've been in this Senate for the last 7 years or so. And by the time we pass the division of revenue, there is a process. We start with, estimates, the budget policy statement, we go to medium-term debt strategy, and then eventually we go and we pass the division of revenue. We did that. Why are we reinventing the wheel? Mr. Speaker, let us just for once respect the rule of law. I sat in this House, very House, and we actually passed the third generation formula, which determine how much money is sent to counties and how much money is maintained. We set a bare minimum. Now what we are being asked to do is to now go against the Constitution. This is ludicrous. There's no time, Mr. Speaker, that we've actually even, the money that we've passed has all gone to counties. Treasury has always had a debt. So I think when we talk about these issues, let us be factual and let us remember that we are guided by principles. We have the rule of law. The moment we start now opening the division of revenue debate, we're actually going to be abdicating on our duties. You know, then at that point I'll just tell us, let us just fold and go. Because if you're telling us that what we passed here, 400 billion, we are now being told to reduce. We forget that when you look at the Division of Revenue bill, or rather act, if you look at section 5 of that, it says any shortfall is absorbed by the national government. You know, so why is the national government not absorbing it? Colleagues, let us defend our counties. That is why we are here. You know, we are here to make sure that we defend the rule of law. You know, we stop dancing to the tune of the executive. Yes, the Gen Zs are saying that there is a lot of wastage of public funds. But it's not about our counties' structures. Our counties need to be built. We need to be able to support our counties. When it comes to the issue of accountability, we now deal with the issue of accountability. Madam Speaker, we have the DPP, who is now notorious in making sure he's withdrawing corruption cases, and yet we keep on talking about fighting corruption. You know, ESCC is also there. In fact, I always say ESCC is the most corrupt body in this country. You know, because they don't really respect their institutions. So, Madam Speaker, as I conclude, let us remember that we are here for a very short time. The time we are here, let us make sure that we leave a mark in this country called Kenya. You know, this issue where we have laws and they are only good on paper, or they are determined by other interest bodies, where we just make laws which are reactionary, must come to an end. So, Madam Speaker, the Senate is there to oversight the executive, but not to be an extension of the executive or to dance to the tunes of the executive. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Chirarike Samson Kiprotich.
Mr. Speaker, I have not spoken on commenting on...
No.
I was just reading my statements. Huh? No, I wanted to comment on performance of athletics. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, thank you very much. I want to support Senator Crystal Lasige, Madam Speaker, on the issue of performance of athletics.
Senator
Mr.
Sifuna, what is your point of order? Resume your seat, Senator Chirarike.
Honorable Speaker, it has been the tradition on this floor that when people have read their statements, they allow other people who have not spoken to contribute to the statements. But you cannot read, he read 5 statements. Now he wants to comment on another statement. Allow other people to also contribute, and they are on the queue. Honorable Chair, it is not proper.
Okay, Senator Chirarike, just to ensure equity, and that equity and justice to be seen to be done, let me allow other senators. I'll still give you a chance to comment on the other statements, but please sit ground because you read the statements, and let me call Senator Wamatinga.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And let me also start by thanking Senator Sifuna. Indeed, these are some of the people that we need in this country so that equity can prevail. Madam Speaker, I also want to add my voice into the various statements that have been raised today. Indeed, let me start by commending the head of state, none other than His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, for forming a broad-based government. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is not about the individuals who are named in the cabinet where they came from. It is the spirit. Once we realize that this country belongs to all of us, once we realize that there is need for us to talk with one another, once we realize that nobody has monopoly of knowledge, once we realize that this country is greater than any one of us, that is the moment that we'll start moving this country forward. Madam Speaker, the issue of sports in this country has indeed made Kenya a great name across the world. However, we have not done as a country justice to the ambassadors who have done us so proud in ensuring that our name, our flag, and the national anthem has been sung in all Olympic stadiums across the globe. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I want to concur with my colleagues that it is the high time that we invest a little bit more in sports, but most importantly, we must come up with a policy. And I do agree that it is the high time that we start considering giving counties conditional grants so that we can ensure that they invest in sports. And that, Madam Speaker, should not stop there. We must come with a kind of a blueprint on how it should be implemented. Madam Speaker, we know that different counties are endowed with different resources, and that also goes for the sports. And therefore, Madam Speaker, it is imperative that we start exploring avenues that we can give the young people who have those talents an opportunity to be able to compete in international arenas. That can only happen, Madam Speaker, if we put the equipment and the resources in place that will enable them to compete with their colleagues in other countries. Madam Speaker, the issue of tea, coffee, and milk, as has been said here, Madam Speaker, I sit in the Agricultural Committee, and the attempt by the committee to ensure that we revive that sector by formulating bills and amending the laws that are there have not been very, very successful, because we as a country have now started concentrating on non-issues and leaving issues that affect our people that are more important. The issue of coffee, Madam Speaker, the issue of tea, the issue of milk. When we were campaigning around this country, Madam Speaker, we did promise our electorate that we are going to ensure that we come up with an elaborate, with a comprehensive solution, and most importantly, with a sound legal framework that will ensure the exploitation of the farmers by the cartels has come to an end. Madam Speaker, when we hear about tons and bulk of tea lying in the port of Mombasa in the auction, it makes us very, very sad, Madam Speaker, because we know that just the other day we had a very, very strong dollar, and therefore the farmers could have reaped the benefit, but we've waited for too long. Now the dollar is getting weak, the Kenyan currency is gaining, and this, Madam Speaker, to the farmers, they lose. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I think now in the light of the broad-based government, it is imperative that we as a House, we as senators, without wanting to be seen like we're going to bed with the executive, that we must address this. Nobody, as I said, Madam Speaker, has monopoly of knowledge. It is an opportunity for all of us to set a new beginning, and most importantly, people-centric, and most importantly, Madam Speaker, to ensure that we also inspire the young generation to start taking part in agripreneur. This, Madam Speaker, can be a solution to some of the problems that are facing us. Madam Speaker, the issue of Gen Zs in this country has awakened us to start talking about a tribeless country. And this can only be done, Madam Speaker, when even this House starts now doing politics that is issue-oriented, free from political party divides, free from tribal and ethnicity. And that, Madam Speaker, can only be done if we join hands and say, yes, we have a country, we know that we have a myriad of problems that we must solve, but we must bring our heads together, put our heads together, and say these solutions are meant to address the future generation. Madam Speaker, it is imperative, again, as I said, to ensure that we give the younger generation a perspective and a hope for tomorrow. This has been diminished by the very same policies, by our politics on the floor of this House and outside this House, Madam Speaker. I would want to urge my colleagues, now in the spirit of the broad-based government, let us embrace each other, let us come with policies, and most importantly, let us now try and start looking at issues that affect us as a country and ask ourselves, how do we ensure that we inspire, we give hope, and most importantly, equal opportunities for our youngsters. This, Madam Speaker, can only be done if we close the political divide and say it is our country and we have a sole and a moral responsibility to ensure that we shape the destiny of this country and most importantly for the future and for the young generation. Madam Speaker, it is imperative that as we discuss, as we formulate laws, as we come with bills and debate motions, that we must never forget that this country, if it goes down, it will go down with every one of us. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I want to agree with my colleague, Senator Beth Siengo, that indeed, seeing the treasury being read by somebody from the ODM, maybe this is the opportunity now to ensure that we have equal and develop equal models that will ensure every Kenyan enjoy an equal opportunity. Madam Speaker, I support.
Thank you. Senator Mwinyi Haji Mohamed Faki.
Asante Bispika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuchangia taarifa kadhaa. Nikichangia kwanza ambayo imeletwa na Senator Cherigei kuhusiana na biashara ya chai katika soko la Mombasa. Mheshimiwa Spika, hapo awali bunge la Senate lilipitisha kanuni zile, yani regulations, ambazo liliipa fursa serikali kuweka bei ya chini ya majani chai. Mheshimiwa Spika, kutokana na kanuni hizo, uuzaji wa chai, Mheshimiwa Spika, umeweza kudorora kwa sababu ile chai haiuzwi kulingana na mahitaji ya soko. Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiangalia katika soko huru ni kwamba bei inapatikana kutokana na wingi wa chai na upungufu labda wa haja ama demand and supply factors, kusema ukweli. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, hii kuweka bei ambayo lazima chai iuzwe kwa bei hiyo imefanya soko kudorora, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu mara nyingi ile chai inapouzwa haiwezi kupata ile bei ya chini kabisa ambayo soko limewekwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna chai ambayo inakuja katika soko kupitia kwa KTDA, Kenya Tea Development Authority, na vile vile pia kuna chai ya kutoka kwa watu binafsi. Mheshimiwa Spika, hii chai ambayo imeleta matatizo ni ile chai ambayo inatokana na shirika la KTDA. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, swala hili litaweza kutatuliwa iwapo ile kanuni ambazo zinasema kwamba kuwe na bei ya chini ya chai zitaweza kubadilishwa na kuhakikisha kwamba soko linakuwa huru. Iachiwe soko la East African Tea Traders ambao wanasimamia soko hilo kuangalia ni vipi ambavyo wataweza kuhakikisha wanadhibiti bei ya chai ili chai ile isiweze kupata bei ya chini. Mheshimiwa Spika, ningependa vile vile pia kuchangia statement ya Senator Asige kuhusiana na kudorora kwa Team Kenya katika michezo ya Olimpiki mwaka huu ambayo inafanyika hivi sasa mjini Paris. Mheshimiwa Spika, tumeona kwamba tumekuwa tukifua mbele kwa masuala ya michezo, hususan riadha, ambapo tulikuwa tuna uhakika kwamba tutapata medali ya dhahabu katika mbio za mita 800, mbio za mita 1500, mbio za mita 3000 kuruka maji na viunzi, mbio za mita 5000, mbio za mita 10000 na mpaka mbio ya marathon, na vile vile pia kutembea kwa kilomita 20. Lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sasa mpaka sasa leo tumeweza kupata medali moja ya dhahabu peke yake katika mbio za mita 1500 kwa wanawake. Mheshimiwa Spika, hali hii, matokeo haya ni matokeo duni sana tukilinganisha na vile ambavyo Kenya imekuwa ikifanya katika michezo hii. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, hii imetokana na kwamba kama serikali haijawekeza kikamilifu kwa michezo. Mheshimiwa Spika, tumeona mkimbiaji kama Faith, Mheshimiwa Spika, ameweza kushinda mbio nyingi hapo nyuma. Anaweka rekodi nyingi za ulimwengu. Nafikiri hata sasa katika mbio za mita 5000 na 1500 yeye ndiye mwenye rekodi, lakini juzi hakuweza kufua dafu kwa sababu labda amechoka ama ameweza kujiumiza kabla kufikia kiwango ile michezo ya Olimpiki. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa hivyo tungependa kuwe na uwazi katika uchunguzi huu wa matokeo haya duni. Vile vile Mheshimiwa Spika, kuwe na mfumo wa kuweza kuboresha hali yetu ya michezo, na tutaweza kuboresha wakati tutakuwa na stadia ama viwanja vya kisasa vya kuweza kudhibiti kutumiwa na wachezaji wetu. Mheshimiwa Spika, tumeona Mheshimiwa Spika, tumepiga kelele hapa bungeni kuhusiana na swala la FKF, mpira wa kandanda. Mheshimiwa Spika, mwaka jana tulifanya mikutano kadhaa na FKF pamoja na waziri aliyeondoka Mheshimiwa Ababu na Mwamba. Mheshimiwa Spika, na mpaka sasa bado hali ni ya utata. Koti imesema kwamba ofisi ya Nick Mwenda imemaliza wakati wake, lakini bado Nick Mwenda yuko pale pale, hajaitisha mkutano wa kuhusiana na mkutano mkuu wa mwaka ili kupanga mikakati ya kuchagua ofisi nyingine. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, hatuwezi kukaa hivi wakati tunaona kwamba hali yetu ya michezo inadorora. Nilifurahi juzi wakati Senator Murkomen alipokuwa akihojiwa, aliposema kwamba atahakikisha kwamba amesafisha mashirika yote ya michezo, na akasema kwamba ameona kwa kila mara serikali ikitaka kuchukua hatua kwa mambo ya kandanda, watu wanakimbilia kwa FIFA. Hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika ni taarifa nzuri, lakini sasa ni wakati wa kubadilisha taarifa hiyo kuwa vitendo. Aanze na hapo hapo kwa FKF, ahakikishe kwamba tumeweza kupata uongozi mpya wa mpira labda kufikia Disemba mwaka huu, ili matayarisho ya AFCON 2027 yawe yako sawa sawa, na vile vile Kenya iweze kufanya vizuri katika michezo hiyo. Ni jambo la kusikitisha Mheshimiwa Spika kwamba mpaka sasa hatuna kiwanja ambacho kinaweza kuchezesha ama kinaweza kutumiwa host ama kuandaa mchezo ambao unadhaminiwa na shirika la FIFA ulimwenguni ama CAF, hii federation ya Afrika ya masuala ya mpira. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono statement ambayo imeletwa na Senator Asige, ambayo ni sote tunahudumu katika kamati ya leba na masuala ya jamii katika bunge hili. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, nimeona hapa kiongozi wetu kiranja wetu Senator Sifuna na Senator Kajwang na Senator Siengo wameweza kuendelea na mjadala mrefu hapa, wakati sisi tunatoa michango yetu kwa mambo muhimu ambayo yanahusiana na taifa hili. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Honorable Senators, it is important you pay attention to what Senator Mwinyi Haji Mohamed Faki is contributing to the House. It's very important, especially because he speaks on behalf of Mombasa County. Senator Mungatana Danson Buya.
Mama Speaker, pia mimi napenda kuchukua nafasi hii kusema asante kwa kunipa nafasi na mimi nitoe mchango wangu kwa statement ya Mheshimiwa Kathuri kuhusu shida za wafanyikazi wa hospitali. Speaker, mimi nakumbuka sana tulipokuwa wadogo, wakati ambapo baba na mama wote ni watu wa wafanyikazi wa kitengo cha afya, walikuwa wakifanya kazi kwa serikali, na ingawaje tulikuwa wadogo tulikuwa tunaona dhiki na shida katika hali ya kimaisha. Speaker, ukweli wa mambo tukiwa tuna unga mkono statement ya mheshimiwa ni kwamba magavana wa Kenya mara nyingi wakiwa wanashughulikia mipango ya afya hawaangalii shida na changamoto za wafanyikazi katika kitengo cha afya. Mara nyingi utaona wanaenda kushughulikia kujenga mijengo ama kufanya mambo ambayo yanaweza pengine kupata kitu, lakini ikifika mahali pa kushughulikia wale wafanyikazi wa kiserikali za kaunti kwa upande wa afya, unaona wanawachilia sehemu hiyo. Kwa hivyo mimi naunga mkono hiyo statement, kwa sababu saa hii wafanyikazi wa Meru wa afya wameenda mgomo, na ni kwa sababu ya shida na ni kwa sababu ya kutojaliwa na mamlaka ya governor wa sehemu hiyo. Kwa hivyo nimesimama hapa Speaker kuunga mkono statement hiyo, na niseme kwamba tuangalie haki na tuwafanyie haki wafanyikazi wa serikali. Mimi najua Speaker, kama mimi mwenyewe na familia yetu tulipokuwa wadogo, kama mzee na mama hawakutoka kwa serikali kwenda kufanya private practice, ninajua tungekuwa tumeishi maisha mengine tofauti na vile wale waliobaki na wale tulipowajua waliobaki kufanya na serikali. Madam Speaker, mimi maombi yangu ni kwamba upande wa afya pia upewe pesa za kutosha, kwa sababu na tusiseme haiwezekani, inawezekana, kwa sababu sisi wengine ambao tumefanya kitengo cha justice ama haki, tunajua miaka iliyopita mawakili ambao walikuwa wanafanya upande wa serikali sote tulikuwa tunajua hawalipwi vizuri. Na mara nyingi sisi tulipokuwa tunaanza kazi, sote tulikuwa tunakimbilia upande wa kufanya kazi kibinafsi ama private practice, kwa sababu huko ndio tulikuwa tunajua kuna hela. Lakini miaka hii iliyokuja baadaye, tumeona serikali inalipa mawakili wao vizuri. Prosecutor na DPP wako sawa sawa, ama hakuna tofauti kubwa kati ya wale ambao wanafanya kazi kwa serikali na wale ambao wanafanya kazi kwa upande wa kibinafsi ama private practice. Na ukweli wa mambo ni kwamba kama serikali wameweza kufanya kwa upande wa mawakili na upande wa sheria, hakuna sababu nzuri ya kutosha ya kutofanya hivyo kwa wafanyikazi wa kitengo cha afya. Kwa hivyo hakuna sababu ya sisi kusema magavana wasifanye hivyo. Na Speaker, mimi nikiwa naongea hivi nasema kwa sababu ya shida ambayo iko Tana River. Na maombi yangu ni kwamba wakati kamati ya afya ya seneti watakapokaa kuongelea swala hili, waangalie pia sehemu ya Tana River. Speaker, utakuta kwamba wafanyikazi wetu wana mishahara duni, na mishahara duni hii utakuta sehemu zingine, kaunti zingine, watu wanapata mishahara mikubwa kushinda wale wanaofanya kazi Tana River. Na inaleta mgogoro, kwa sababu unakuta watu wengine wanataka kutoka wakafanye kazi kwa kaunti zingine na wanatoroka ile kaunti, na ilhali wote wamefanya training sawa sawa. Kwa hivyo swala hili liangaliwe na kamati ya afya. Kamati ya afya waulize kwa nini Council of Governors hawawezi kuweka kusawazisha ama ikuwe standardized. Ukiwa wewe unafanya kazi ya nurse kwa kaunti hii, uwe pia unalipwa mshahara sawa sawa na wale wanafanya kwa kaunti zingine. Kwa nini tusiwe na structure ambayo itasimamia Kenya mzima, kaunti ya 47 ziwe watu wanapata mishahara ya kisawa? Pia Speaker, promotion ya hawa wafanyikazi wa serikali, unakuta kuwa kuna sehemu zingine, kaunti zingine watu wanachelewesha, kaunti zingine watu wanafanyiwa haraka, na haieleweki ni kwa sababu gani. Kwa hivyo ninaomba wakati ambao statement hii inaangaliwa, Council of Governors pia waitwe na wajieleze ni kwa nini hawezi kuwa na structure ambayo tunajua itakuwa inafanya kama ni mambo ya promotion katika hizi gatuzi ya 47 ziwe zinaenda sawa sawa. Speaker, kule kwetu Tana River kuna wale ambao waliandikwa kazi kitengo cha afya na waliandikwa na contract. Unakuta kaunti zingine contract hizo zimeanzishwa upya ama zimekuwa extended na wamekuwa absorbed. Lakini sasa katika kaunti yetu hawa ambao wamefanya kazi na contract hawaja kuwa absorbed. Na swali tunauliza ni kwa nini kaunti zingine wanafanya hivyo na kaunti zingine kama yetu wafanyikazi hawapewi zile contract ambazo zinatakikana. Speaker, sisi tunaomba ya kwamba kuwe na standardization ama usawazishaji wa mambo ya haki za wafanyikazi wa afya katika Kenya mzima na gatuzi nzima za Kenya. Speaker, katika statement hiyo na kutokana na mambo ambayo yanafanyika katika kaunti yangu, kwa sababu ya kukosa kuwapatia wale wafanyikazi extended contracts, kuna kitu kinaitwa understaffing ama ukosaji wa wafanyikazi wa kutosha katika health department. Watu wengi wakienda hospitali wanakuta pengine yule ambaye ni mkubwa wa hospitali ndio clinical officer, tena yeye ndio anasimamia kuandika records. Unakuta katika hizi dispensary, Madam Speaker, kuna shida kwa sababu wale ambao walikuwa wakuwa extended katika hizi 4-year contract hawakupewa extension. Counties zingine wamekuwa absorbed. So Madam Speaker, naomba wakati kamati ya health waangalie pia sehemu zingine kama Tana River. Poor working conditions, Madam Speaker. Unakuta mtu anaenda kufanya kazi, yeye anataka pengine kupatikane mapimo ya damu. Wakienda kule hakuna zile zinaitwa reagents ama zile dawa ambazo zinatakikana ili hiyo damu ikipimwa ilete majibu ambayo daktari atafanyia kazi. Mtu anatumwa lab, utakuta hakuna reagents. Mtu anatumwa kwa pharmacy, unakuta zile dawa ambazo zingefaa zimsaidie yule mgonjwa baada ya kuonwa na daktari hakuna. Speaker, tunataka kamati ya Senate ya afya waangalie pia sehemu zingine, sio hapo Meru peke yake. Waangalie hata Tana River County kuna shida gani, ili wakati wanatoa uamuzi watoe uamuzi wa kutosha. Wafanyikazi wa serikali kweli kule Tana River wengine wamepata nyumba, lakini zile nyumba ni za zamani, zilijengwa wakati wa ukoloni. Na Speaker, ukweli ni kwamba nyingi zinaporomoka na hakuna namna ama budgets ambazo zinawekwa kusaidia kutengeneza hizi nyumba ili wafanyikazi wa pale wawe wanafanya kazi vizuri. Watu wanaenda hospitali, mfanyikazi wa hospitali yuko pale kazini, lakini hata vyoo unakuta haviko visafi, haviko na hali ya kutumika. Mtu akiwa yuko pale hospitali anafanya kazi, inabidi tena arudi tena nyumbani ikiwa amepata mwito wa haja. Bwana Speaker, tunasema statement hii ikifika katika kamati ya health iangaliwe zaidi na iangaliwe kama kwa ujumla na Kenya mzima. Naomba kuunga mkono statement hiyo. Asante.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Mudhama Agnes Kabindu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support the statements that have been read here. And I'll start with the Deputy Speaker's statement, Kathuri Murangi, Meru. Madam Speaker, this statement is very timely for what is happening right now in the counties. Doctors, nurses, and even cleaners in hospitals are not well taken care of. One, they are underpaid. Two, Madam Speaker, they are vulnerable because they meet with all manner of patients, with all manner of diseases and sicknesses. And they are there to treat them without fear for their lives. So, Madam Speaker, if there are people to be taken care of and to be considered and to be made happy so that even as they work in a conducive environment that will even encourage them to continue doing the good work that they do. Madam Speaker, like in Machakos, I've seen cleaners who clean all manner of dirt, blood, urine, and name it, all manner of dirt in hospitals. There is a contractor who has written, contract with the government, county government, and he has employed cleaners. They go up to 7 months without pay, and yet him is earning his pay every month, and he doesn't pay them. And so when the Committee of Health is considering this statement, they should also look into the welfare of the cleaners who clean in county hospitals.
Relations Act to provide for the Council of Governors Secretariat as well as County Assembly Forum Secretariat to provide for their role in horizontal intergovernmental relations. You know very well that in 2016, when Senate and the County Assemblies established the Legislative Summit in Mombasa, Madam Speaker, part of the takeaways of that particular conference 8 years ago was to set up CAF as anchored in law so as to be the lead lobby agencies for our county assemblies. County assemblies do an extremely important job as far as entrenching devolution in these countries. And this House, being the primary institution charged with the responsibility of anchoring devolution in our country, Madam Speaker, must work hard to ensure that any institution that works towards achieving that particular objective, Madam Speaker, is anchored in law. It's unfortunate, Madam Speaker, that it has taken us this long, actually, to listen and agree to the proposal that came from our colleagues in the county assemblies as well. And many times, those of you that have attended legislative assemblies forum, where you bring together county assemblies and Senate, apart from the sometimes ad hominem arguments about car grants and whatnot, Madam Speaker, there's more serious discussion that normally goes on. This is one of the serious discussions that comes out of that particular forum. And they ask us to anchor them in law for a horizontal relationship with the county governments, Madam Speaker, so that they are able to perform their duties and roles, Madam Speaker, better. Many people don't know, for example, Madam Speaker, that even we as Senate, and I feel bad about this, Madam Speaker, because I've been around all those years this House has existed, we have actually been unfair to our colleagues who serve in the county assemblies. Do you know, Senator Boni Halwale, for example, that even the offices of leadership in our county assemblies are not anchored in any legislation or any law. Yet it is expected of us, especially the Senate, that understands the importance of proper leadership in our county assemblies so that they are able to hold governors to account, Madam Speaker, have not been prudent enough to establish that. That's why you need county assemblies forum. That is not just a lobby group. What exists today, Madam Speaker, is simply a lobby group where people of like-minded have come together and continue to lobby for and on behalf of our county assemblies, Madam Speaker. That's why there's even a splinter group, Madam Speaker, the one that Senator Cherargei mentioned. I forgot the name just a few minutes ago. Anchor, yes. AMCA? Yes, Association of Members of the County Assemblies, Madam Speaker, because they feel that you need to divorce them even from, County Assemblies Forum brings together the speakers, the clerks, and the members of county assemblies. MCAs long got tired of waiting for CAF, Madam Speaker, to bring out their issues and make sure they are properly addressed, that they set up an institution of their own, the one called AMCA. If you establish, and I have said many times to them that I don't, while I may agree with them in the prescription, in the diagnosis of the challenge that county assemblies face, I don't agree with their final prescription, which is of them as members of county assemblies forming a union that is a body corporate separate to them. CAF brings together all the working organs and offices of the county assemblies, and that is part of the proposal that is being given here. To the specifics of the bill, Madam Speaker, this bill proposes to change the name of Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee. Very long, mouthful name, headed by a gentleman, I keep forgetting his name, but a very good friend of ours that never misses in our either devolution conferences or legislative summit, Madam Speaker, to speak on behalf of this institution. We are actually proposing to rename it, Madam Speaker, to the Intergovernmental Relations Agency. We are not recreating a new institution, but just renaming it, Madam Speaker, so that it's easier for everybody to, first of all, relate and understand what it is about. By having the word technical in this institution, Madam Speaker, it reduces even their seriousness and how people perceive them. They imagine these are people whose duty is just to provide technical advice, and that's where it ends. That's why we want to set up an agency, an institution, Madam Speaker, that when they speak, people listen and appreciate and understand what that institution does. This legislative proposal, Madam Speaker, it proposes to remove the permanent secretary responsible for matters devolution from IRTC, Madam Speaker, because we feel that the presence of this particular PS, Madam Speaker, actually in that institution was misplaced. This is purely about our county governments and their assemblies. Therefore, there'll be another level at which they interact, but not necessarily sitting together in one board. This bill also provides the qualifications for the terms of the chairperson and members of this committee. Like any agency, Madam Speaker, you must set up the time and the period through which people must serve. Like any good institution, it does not matter how talented you are. Even the best dancers, Madam Speaker, they say must know when to exit the stage. And that's why I like the legislative proposals that increasingly come to this House with regards to setting up a time limit, are specific, put in law, so that you don't have people overstaying in office. I don't believe in people who refuse to leave office. This bill also proposes to enhance the functions of Intergovernmental Relations Agency to include the following up on summit resolutions. Remember what I mentioned a few minutes ago, that actually in passing this law, I am fulfilling a summit resolution that was made more than 8 years ago. You know, in 2016, at I think we were at Pride In, Madam Speaker, if my memory serves me right. That's why you need such an agency, so that once the resolutions have been passed out of the summit and other institutions, Madam Speaker, that work along the lines of devolution, Madam Speaker, there is a body corporate that follows through and ensure that that comes to life. It includes also maintaining a repository of information and knowledge on the intergovernmental matters, coordinating the development of a standardized costing framework for the transferred functions in line with Article 187 of the Constitution, and witness the execution of all relevant legal instruments pertaining the transfer of functions. This topic of the transfer of functions, Madam Speaker, is a topic that we need to bury. And how you bury it, Madam Speaker, I know very well that, for example, when President William Ruto came to office, at his inaugural speech at Moi International Sports Center, Kasarani, he gave a commitment to the country that we need to complete, actually, the costing and transfer of functions to the devolved units. A promise that, just like in the previous administration, Madam Speaker, continues to be work in progress without a definite date of when that will come to an end. This is one of the key and the core responsibilities of this agency, especially with the absence of the interference of the national government, because you have removed the PS representing the national government, so that this is purely about the county governments and the assemblies, Madam Speaker. They can do the costing and agree with the National Treasury, raise these matters at the summit, so that we can bury this conversation about the transfer of functions, Madam Speaker. Clause 4, Madam Speaker, it proposes also to give Intergovernmental Relations Agency the powers to gather, by such means as it considers appropriate, any relevant information of reports where it considers necessary to perform its functions. It gives advice with respect to disputes and take measures it considers necessary to ensure that the principles of cooperative government set out in Article 189 and Article 6 of our Constitution, ensuring, Madam Speaker, that there is a better coordinated relationship between the county and the national governments. Article 189, Madam Speaker, of our Constitution envisions and aspires to a nation where the counties and the national government, Madam Speaker, are in sync in terms of service delivery to the Kenyan citizens, Madam Speaker. Not this push and pull that we are accustomed to, especially in the formative years of devolution. I know things have gotten better over the past couple of years, but we don't want a relationship that is founded, rather, Madam Speaker, on the whims of good relations between the men and women that head these institutions. We want it set out in law, Madam Speaker, so that it doesn't matter who is in office, but you have a credible, strong institution that is duty-bound, set out in law, Madam Speaker, to ensure that this happens. That is how you build a cohesive and prosperous nation, Madam Speaker. Point 6, Madam Speaker, this also provides for the establishment of the COG Secretariat in law and the sources of funding of the Council. I know COG receives resources, for example, from the national government, because part of what they do, Madam Speaker, are responsibilities that are shared across the two counties. They also receive a contribution which is informally set. I think it's an equitable amount from all the 47 county governments, Madam Speaker. But now, with the establishment of the CAG Secretariat in law, Madam Speaker, our county governments actually can make a contribution without being offensive to the law. As they do it today, Madam Speaker, it continues to raise an audit query in almost all our 47 county governments, because they are making a donation to a body corporate that is foreign and alien to the operations of our law on devolution, Madam Speaker. With the passage of this bill, Madam Speaker, that will be history, and it makes sure that there are mandatory subscription from county governments and even donations to the councils. There are many non-governmental organizations, for example, that wants to partner with COG in entrenching the beauty of devolution in our country, Madam Speaker, making sure that it succeeds, and all the other forms and organs of that particular institution, Madam Speaker. Setting it up, Madam Speaker, in law assures those that want to work with these institutions that they have a good institution to work with, that is set up in law, whose leadership is known, whose agenda is clear, and, Madam Speaker, people can donate. It also provides for the establishment of the County Assemblies Forum, its function, its secretariat, the sources of funding, as well as subscription from the county assemblies. I have mentioned why this is important, Madam Speaker, that our County Assemblies Forum as well is a body corporate, Madam Speaker, that needs to be the anchor link between Senate and our county assemblies, Madam Speaker, ensuring that there is a standard of practice, even reporting mechanism. I don't see, Madam Speaker, why, for example, many of our committees in the county assemblies, Madam Speaker, do not mimic or copy word for word how we do our reports. The places of the office of Speaker. If you go to many of our county assemblies, and I'm sorry to say this, you'll find that the Speaker is a law, which is not what our Constitution envisioned. The Speaker is an arbiter, just like the Speaker here in the Houses of Parliament. They don't make a determination. I follow what happens in many of our county assemblies, and as a leader, Madam Speaker, I see actually WhatsApp messages that the Speaker just made a determination, change of leadership, set up. You can find up even a Speaker of a county assembly forming a select committee on their own. And because many of our members of our county assembly are actually either on their first term, this is their first interaction with a legislative body, Madam Speaker, they don't understand some of these challenges. It is Senate that is supposed to play the big brother role, Madam Speaker, and be a mentor to our county assemblies, Madam Speaker, to make sure that they come of age. Issues of manipulation of the budget process, Madam Speaker. What are the powers and the limit of powers that county assemblies have with regards to amending a budget proposal that has been sent out to the county assemblies, Madam Speaker? Senate needs to take its rightful place. And it is impossible to do that with all our 47 county assemblies. So what do, Madam Speaker? You work better with the rest of the 47 county assemblies through County Assemblies Forum, so that when you have a sitting with their leadership, when they have a competent secretariat to the level of what we have here in the Senate, Madam Speaker, they are able to guide our county assemblies. We look forward to sending Director Ruge here to train them at CAF. This man is a repository of legislative procedures here in the Senate. The same knowledge needs to be passed to our county assemblies. How do you transfer and pass that knowledge, Madam Speaker? It's not with the visits that we get here every other afternoon. You see the Speaker reading, today we have visitors from Tana River. They have come to learn on the operations of the Senate. Surely, we are taking that joke too far. You need a proper, established by law institution, Madam Speaker, that members of these county assemblies can learn or send their lead clerks, Madam Speaker, their lead legal counsels, Madam Speaker, fiscal analysts, to come and interact with those of the Senate and copy the best practices. That's why it is important to anchor CAF in law and ensure that the same way Council of Governors gets funding from the national government, gets funding from the various counties, the same is done with the County Assemblies Forum, Madam Speaker, so that our county assemblies can rise to the level that was envisioned, Madam Speaker, when we set up devolution. Everything is about perception, Madam Speaker. And people have learned how to tell their stories. Us in the devolution family, we must learn also how to do this. And I speak about this so openly because this is something I appreciate, Madam Speaker. People, and allow me to digress a bit, Madam Speaker, but this is in relation to the point that I'm trying to converse on the floor. People speak their stories in a different way. I don't know what it will take, for example, for Kenyans to know and to learn and to appreciate that how you portray your country to other people, Madam Speaker, reflects even about you. There are riots, for example, Madam Speaker, in the United Kingdom that are going on right now. I have been keenly watching and following how the BBC is covering those riots. Compare that to what our local media does here when there are challenges in our country. And just understand what people know about their country. I was looking to see whether CNN will look for a British journalist to send them to show burning motor vehicles, the same way CNN does with Larry Madowo every time there are problems in the Republic of Kenya. I haven't seen, Madam Speaker, because people know that it matters how you tell the story of your country. And I hope our journalists can take time to follow and see how the BBC, how Sky News is taking time to analyze the issues that are contentious, condemning those that are using extra legal means to pass their point, Madam Speaker, things that you will never hear in the riots and the challenges that we have been facing as a country. It's all about perception and appreciating that nobody will ever do your job of ensuring that even as you pass your point, Madam Speaker, you don't need to beat yourself too hard or try to paint how things are bad and to appear intelligent. Madam Speaker, or assume that you can do better. This is our country. The good that exists in Kenya is for all of us. The bad that exists in one way or the other, Madam Speaker, we are duty-bound to make it better. I hope we could learn about that. And that's why, Madam Speaker, I felt it was just important to mention that with relations to what County Assemblies Forum need to do for our county assemblies. You know, and I appreciate that county assemblies have come of age. You know, previously, Madam Speaker, all we used to hear about, especially in the 2013 to 2017 cycle of devolution, is that there was a fight in this county assembly, there was this that has been happening, they're impeaching this or the other. In fact, there was a bold headline one afternoon, I remember us discussing here, where citizens were saying, disband this thing called county assemblies. But that was then. The county assemblies that we have in present-day Kenya, Madam Speaker, if you follow the debates, they are just as good as you would get even in a national legislature like the Senate of the Republic of Kenya or the National Assembly, if not better, even in certain instances. Even the quality of legislators that are being sent there, citizens are beginning to appreciate that a representative needs to be somebody who knows how to pass on your issues and represent you, feel with you when you have challenges and speak out for your sake, Madam Speaker. Therefore, Madam Speaker, that sets the basis why it will be important for us to support our county assemblies and ensure that they live up to the expectation that we set out. And that's why it will be important for CAF to be set up in law just as we are proposing. I know COG and CAF have proposed amendments. I saw the presentation and I have seen letters in my office from both institutions of how they want this bill to be enriched, Madam Speaker. And I look forward to seeing how the committee, when they eventually table their report before this House, will want to enrich this particular legislation. But it is a good start. Let us conclude on this business, Madam Speaker. We send it to the National Assembly and ensure that we will have done one important assignment to the family of devolution that so looks up to us as the lead institution in fostering and nurturing devolution in our country. With those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I want to request my senior, the Senator for Kakamega and the whip of the majority side, Senator Dr. Boni Halwale, to second this. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Boni Halwale.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I want to thank the leader of the majority for ably moving this motion, this amendment bill. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to start by saying that the issue of intergovernmental relations is too important to be left vague the way it is, Madam Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is a greater need for us to explicitly provide for it through the kind of legislation that the leader of the majority has just moved. And I support the reasons he's used to move this bill fully. Madam Speaker, When I look at the bill specifically, I have very few comments which, to my mind, I think are important. The first one, Madam Speaker, is on page 153 of the bill, where in clause 3(4), the bill provides that a person shall be qualified for appointment as a chairperson of the agency if such a person holds a master's degree from a university recognized in Kenya. Madam Speaker, seeing what is going on in other offices vis-a-vis the offices in the elective organs, namely the National Assembly, the Senate, and the executive, I think we must apply the principle of what is good for the goose must always be good for the gander. I have seen ministers serve in this country without degrees, and here we are setting this high standard for this chairperson. This chairperson will be reporting to people who are supposed to be either equally qualified or better qualified. And therefore, if we want to use education as a measure to allow people to serve in office, then let us stick to it faithfully. To the extent that as during the interviews, this person will be forced to utter his testimonials, and those testimonials will be vetted, we would like, in my view, that the same should apply to all other offices, including ministers and what have you. I sit back and I wonder, 60 years since the advent of education in Kenya, should we be still permitting people to lecture us on how they have limited or no education and they are proud to be serving in big offices, or they are proud for being considered for those offices? I ask, if you are a passenger in an aeroplane, Madam Speaker, and somebody told you that the pilot in the cockpit is illiterate, and currently you are airborne, what would you feel? To fly an aircraft, you must be competent. And surely flying an aircraft, Madam Speaker, is a smaller calling than what is expected of us when we are in constitutional offices. I want again and again to beg all of us to agree that education is important and it should be applied equally as a standard. Madam Speaker, B, it says the chairperson should meet the requirements of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. Again, we should stop allowing the provisions of this chapter in our Constitution, subjecting it to just lip service. It cannot be lip serviced. People must be subjected to Chapter 6 if we want to fight corruption in this country. Madam Speaker, when we televise the vetting process, Madam Speaker, when we make, like we did for the last 2 weeks, we had 15 people going through a committee of this House called Finance and Budget, undergoing vetting. And we vetted them painstakingly. So the same people now, when they go into office, they find that the people who are vetting them are less competent than them. Madam Speaker, we should respect Chapter 6. In the same clause, they are saying that the chairperson should have a distinguished career in their respective fields. Fine.
When you just say distinguished career, without specifying how long you have been in that career, you are making it open-ended, and you are also creating an opportunity whereby people start thinking the distinguished career, the longer it is, the more attractive. We have young people from the university, for example, and I have some such young people in my family, my own children. With 2 years, 3 years of experience, they are perfect professionals. I look at my children and I say, anybody denying these young people from serving the country because they do not have those many years of experience is actually denying qualified Kenyans an opportunity to serve us even better. Madam Speaker, Clause 5, it says, provides for membership to be a member of this board. They tell us that the member in B should have knowledge and experience of at least 10 years in matters relating to the board functions. 10 years. Madam Speaker, these 10 years, I hope to amend this provision so that we reduce it from 10 years of experience on matters devolution to 3 years, so as to attract young professionals from the university to get employment, and 2, not to unnecessarily favor older members of society in hogging jobs that can be equally done by the youth. Madam Speaker, this is also in recognition, reducing it from 10 to 3 years, is in recognition to the fact that even devolution by itself has not been there for too long. It's just been there for 11 years. So where will you get all these professions who have got 10 years of experience in matters of devolution? There are not that many because the principle has been around for a very short time. Madam Speaker, the bill also provides that the person and members of the intergovernmental agency shall serve on a full-time basis. Fine. But let us reflect on this. Before we legislate that an agency like this one serves on a full-time basis, let us dissect the functions and ask ourselves, can these functions be done on a quarterly basis, so that, or a half-yearly basis, or whatever basis other than full-time, so that we save the government the high cost of running government? You know the experience we have today, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. A commission that just sits to decide how much people should be paid. Why is it serving full-time basis? Let us assign functions to these agencies, dissect these functions, and justify the need for us to make it a full-time agency. Similarly, and Madam Speaker, you are a lawyer, you know in this country there exists the Law Reform Commission. The Law Reform Commission, I'm yet to hear in the National Assembly, I'm yet to see in this Senate proposals from the Law Reform Commissions, proposals for legislation, because it was put there for purposely to modernize our laws in resonance with the new constitution, to update our laws so that we migrate from the laws the way they had been structured under the old constitution to the way we need to. But the Law Reform Commission is there. It is not bringing those proposals. It therefore calls for this debate, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I will not want to speak for too long. Let me just make one last comment in support, in seconding this bill. Clause 20A speaks to Majority Leader funding of the council. And we are being told that it will be funded by annual subscriptions by county governments, and such monies as may be lawfully granted or donated to the council. If we leave it this way,
we run a risk of having an agency that is facing a drought of funds, and its functions will be poorly carried out. If it is an intergovernmental agency, why are we asking the county governments alone to make those subscriptions? We must, after asking the county governments to make the subscriptions, we must also ask the national government, because it is an intergovernmental. National government, county government, both of them should make subscriptions. Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I wish to second, and I thank you.
Thank you, Senator Halwale. Now we can have Senator Olekina Ledama. Also, Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the Intergovernmental Relations Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 12 of 2024, be now read a second time. And I will call upon the senators to make their contributions now. Senator Olekina Ledama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish the Majority Leader was here when I'm making my submissions. Let me begin by supporting this bill. I think this is a very, very important bill. I've got a few concerns, which of course I want to be able to raise, because for over the last 12 years, which the Council of Governors has been in place, the Council of Governors has been operating illegally. Illegally because if you look at the current statute, which is now currently being amended, it sets the Intergovernmental Relations Agency as the Secretariat of the Council of Governors. I have a big problem with setting up this Council of Governors in statute if it does not respect the existing Act. I'm concerned, Madam Speaker, that in these new amendments which are being proposed by the ML, a Council of Governors is being established and the funding for it is being sought from the shareable revenue. We sit in this House to be able to divide money between county governments, and when that money goes to the county governments, the Assembly considers the budget for the executive, and then now we are now introducing another monster in the room, whereby the Assembly will be sitting down there and saying in their own budget, they'll be setting some money aside to subscribe to this new Council of Governors, or this Council of Assemblies Forum. Yet also the executive, in its budget, will be setting aside money, which is shareable revenue, money which is supposed to go to counties to support them to set up a club of men and women to go and sit down and chat. Yet the framers of the Constitution, when they set up the Intergovernmental Agency, which before was, I don't know the name before, it was called what? It was Transition Authority, saw it fit to set up an independent body that can be able to balance the relationship between the two arms of government, the national government and the Council of Government. Madam Speaker, I have a problem with over-legislating. And I have a problem with now saying, because these guys, the Council of Governors, have been operating illegally, let us now then put them in statute, and then we now go and get money which is supposed to go and help build hospitals, build schools, fund our children to go to school in scholarships and bursaries. Let us now give them the leeway to be able to go and decide this is how much money we are going to send to employ a CEO to be able to run this council,
to employ a secretariat, I have a problem with that, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the neater way is to be able to ensure that the current statute as it is continues when it comes to the issue of the Secretariat of the Council of Governors. How do you tell us that you're going to set up a secretariat for us and then we are going to fund it and then we are going to be accountable for it? There's a problem here, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on this issue of the establishment of the County Assemblies Forum, I strongly support that, but I believe for the independence of this agency, Exchequer, which is currently funding this agency, should continue funding it so that they can be independent. We have a serious problem currently between the relationship of governors and MCAs because the assemblies are not semi-autonomous. They depend on the governor to be able to give them money. In fact, if you go to most counties, they'll tell you, oh, governor have not given us money, our money. Why? And this is the body which is supposed to oversight you. So although I support this bill, I want to persuade my colleague, the majority leader, to completely delete Section 20A, which is now being proposed, as well as delete. So I'll be proposing to him to delete this new section, funding of the council, and leave that role to be carried out by this intergovernmental agency. You cannot say it's an intergovernmental agency, yet you're now coming in and telling me, fund it from your own shareable revenue. Shareable revenue should be used as per the intended functions. Number two, Madam Speaker, I would also be persuading the majority leader to delete Section 23C, funding of the forum. Let the money which is being given to the agency, the Intergovernmental Relations Agency, let the money which is being given to them by the Exchequer run all those functions of that forum. And even if you're going to have a council of governors, let the secretariat remain, as per the current statute, to be the Intergovernmental Relations Agency. We really need to be able to differentiate between accountability and between just a council, sort of like a club of men and women going there to sit down and talk about what they've done. What I like about this is that when you look at Section 4 of this act, of this amendment, of this bill, which is now amending this act, it talks clearly of the following functions, which are very clear. Facilitate dispute resolution between national government and county government within the framework provided under this act. That I support. You always need to have an arbiter. Now, tell me, Madam Speaker, how are you going to be able to have an arbiter, yet you have your own secretariat? Your own secretariat will come out there and say, we don't agree with the powers that have been given to this current agency. We want to be the one who are now going to dictate to this agency on what they should be able to go and negotiate for us with this new Council of Governors which is being funded. I think this is wrong, and I hope that my colleagues who will speak after me on this matter will agree with me that Section 20A is really unnecessary. Madam Speaker, when you look at the order paper today, it talks about reinventing the wheel, amending the division of revenue bill. So hypothetically, if we now pass this, if we pass this bill and we rush it first and it is ascended into law, doesn't that mean that county governments will now have to redo their entire budgets again, make a provision, create a new budget line to be able to fund the Council of Governors? Senator Kajuang will tell you that for the last 10 years, we've been agonizing on the legality of county government funding the Council of Governors. So since they have been operating in an illegal framework all throughout, the best thing to do is to have a complete independent body. We talk about corruption here every day. We talk about county governments being corrupt. I see that you've given this new council powers. Receive and transmit. No, it says, I think I've seen somewhere where it says summon anyone to be able to appear before it. Let us do away with unnecessary creation of secretariats. We're just creating jobs for people. And even when those jobs have been established, you'll find that they only go to certain parts of this country, as if we are just visitors in this country. You know? So, Madam Speaker, although I support these amendments, I too will be bringing amendments, and I hope that my colleagues will agree with me that we need to stop this wastage. I want to summarize by saying the following. Number one, we do not need a secretariat of the Council of Governors. The secretariat of the Intergovernmental Agency, which is currently by statute the secretariat of the Council of Governors, should remain as so. We just need to be able to make it very clear so that people know. Number two, we do not need to divert money which is meant for our people. The shareable revenue, the one we are crying every day to increase, to be money which now these guys are now going to be paying a subscription. And what actually convinces me that what I'm saying should be what this Senate should adopt is the fact that when you look at that Section 20A being introduced, it says as follows: 20A1B, such monies as may be lawfully granted or donated to the council. It doesn't say who is going to donate. One county government might say, we have so much money, we are now going to donate to the council, because the other county government is poor. It also says this council shall determine biannually the amount to be paid by county government as subscription. Madam Speaker, that is wrong. So I want to persuade my colleagues, and I hope that you pay attention to what I'm saying. Let us do away with this new provision which is being introduced. It is not necessary. It is expensive. People are talking about austerity measures. There is nothing which will be able to convince me that we practice what we preach if we reduce the expenses. Because the moment you set up that Council of Governors Secretariat and you put it under statute, it means that one day these county governors will just sit, and depending on the powers of the CEO of that secretariat, county governments might be told to donate 100 million every year so that they can have big events where it's just talk shops, and you cannot actually find something very tangible. So, Madam Speaker, I support, of course, with amendments to the amendments. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Tobiko Pesi Paris.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand to support the Intergovernmental Relations Amendment Bill 2024, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have heard the concerns of our colleagues, the senators who have contributed to this bill, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and I have had a chance to interact with IGRTC, which is now proposed to become the agency, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, we have also had a chance to listen to the COG and to the County Assemblies Forum, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm personally convinced on the necessity of these various bodies, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the agency has been operating as the secretariat of the summit. It has also, Madam Speaker, been the one facilitating and coordinating the sectoral forums, Madam Speaker, of the county governments, Madam Speaker, and the national government, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, it has also been coordinating meetings of IBEC. And so, Madam Speaker, because the Intergovernmental Agency, or IGRTC, was a successor of the Transitional Authority, and this House knows very well that there are so many functions and accompanying resources that should be devolved, that have not yet been devolved or moved from the national government to the county governments, Madam Speaker. And there must be this body to continue pushing, to continue persuading, to continue lobbying, the national government to let go the functions that are devolved, Madam Speaker. The functions according to Schedule 4, Madam Speaker, which should then be devolved to county governments. We know there have been a struggle. The Transitional Authority tried the much it could, but its time expired before it completed this work. The IGRTC came in, Madam Speaker, and has done its bit, but still there is so much that needs to be done. Madam Speaker, we have realized that the national government would just not let go functions or resources if they are not, pushed, sometimes almost coerced to let go devolved functions, Madam Speaker. I know ideally, it should be as smooth as possible. Ideally, national government should let go because, devolved units are a creation of the constitution of this republic, Madam Speaker. But the reality is that they are not letting go. The reality is that there must be a body that will continue to push and to ensure that this is done, Madam Speaker. And sometimes, national government has let go of functions without resources, almost, in a way that they would want to see the devolved units fail, Madam Speaker. And so the agency exists of necessity and should be empowered by law, should be enabled by law with the necessary resources, Madam Speaker. And as far as the Council of Governors is concerned, Madam Speaker, it has created a forum of standardization, Madam Speaker, amongst our counties, Madam Speaker, so that counties can be able to compare notes, Madam Speaker, can be able to assist each other, Madam Speaker. Because even as these units were created, it was never meant, Madam Speaker, that they are so independent, that they are so autonomous of each other, that they can't learn from each other, Madam Speaker. The successes of Kakamega today would be good if Kajiado can get a chance to learn from Kakamega. Madam Speaker, it is the COG that has been able to identify. Madam Speaker, do I stop and give them a chance to continue speaking?
Honorable Senators, just continue with the debate. They will consult in low tones.
Low
tones.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, we have seen COG also pushing for what should be, for resources to the county governments. Unity is strength. When they operate together, they get the energy, they get the courage, they get the stamina to be able to push further. Because seemingly, in this country, things are not just done normally. If things were just done normally, that you will let go when you're told this belongs to Senator Mungatana, you will let go what belongs to Senator Mungatana. But if you must be pushed to release what belongs to Senator Mungatana, then there will be a body or someone to push you to let go, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, the COG also exists of necessity and has helped the counties. Madam Speaker, has challenged, has become a forum for counties to challenge each other, Madam Speaker, to perform better, to pull their socks, Madam Speaker. They have addressed situations like the Meru situation, Madam Speaker, even trying to go to see what is it that is ailing this county, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, I think these bodies do exist of necessity and must be enabled by law, Madam Speaker, so that they do not exist, in vacuum, and they do not exist outside the law, Madam Speaker. And this law is meant, Madam Speaker, to facilitate that. The County Assembly's Forum, Madam Speaker, has also given voice to the county assemblies, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Speakers Forum, the County Assemblies Forum, the Society of Clerks, Madam Speaker, are bodies like all the other professional bodies we see in this country, of accountants, of engineers that have operated, Madam Speaker, to ensure that standards are there, Madam Speaker, that ethics are there, Madam Speaker. And the same thing is what these bodies are doing, Madam Speaker, in the devolved arena, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, I do support what has been proposed, that we anchor these bodies in law, that, Madam Speaker, we continue pushing for devolution, we continue protecting devolution, and these bodies are not just there, as Senator Ledama would want us to believe, that, it's just some club of men and women who are meeting, just for the sake of, Madam Speaker. They are meeting to make devolution work, Madam Speaker. And I think it is important that we support, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, I support the creation of the agency and the facilitation of the agency. I support, the support of the Council of Governors from the Exchequer, Madam Speaker. Actually, counties should not be struggling to pay even a subscription fee. Counties should not be struggling to try and anchor the COG somewhere, Madam Speaker, and to look like they are stealing money from the executive, the county executives, or from devolved functions to be able to support the COG. The COG is an important body, and so it should actually be financed from the Exchequer, Madam Speaker. So is the County Assemblies Forum, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we need these bodies in order to have harmony, to have standardizations, to have a basis for devolution to work, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Perry. Senator Moses Kajwang.
Madam Speaker, I rise to support the bill that has been sponsored by the Leader of Majority. And, Madam Speaker, in the last Parliament, I had the privilege of serving as the chair of the Devolution Committee. And these matters came before my chair. And indeed, we brought in a legislative proposal before this House but it was too close to the elections. I think it was about a month or two to the elections. At that point in time, the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee, which we want to rename as the Intergovernmental Relations Agency, had wanted to be a commission. And we thought that that was a bit self-serving, a bit selfish, because they argued that they should be established like a constitutional commission, like the other Article 250 commissions, constitutional commissions, and that sounded rather ambitious. Madam Speaker, I want to speak to the spirit of this bill rather than to the letter of the bill, as my senior senator for Kakamega has done. He has spoken elaborately to the letter. Let me talk about the spirit. Intergovernmental relations is a constitutional provision, and if you look at Articles 185, 186, 187 going onwards, it requires that the two levels of government must have formal mechanisms for consultation and for working together. Devolution is not just about counties, because sometimes we think that when you talk devolution, it is just about counties, because devolution is a balance of power between subsidiary units and the national government unit. So when you're talking about devolution, you can't talk about counties at the expense of the national government. And that is the reason why there was need to have this coordinating mechanism, which was given effect by the Intergovernmental Relations Act. In the last Parliament, I looked at the Intergovernmental Relations Act, and I think that it's an act of Parliament that needs further amendments beyond what we are doing today. I will give you an example of the unprecedented transfer of functions that happened in Nairobi City County. The transfer of functions ideally should be guided by Article 187 or thereabouts and given further effect in the Intergovernmental Relations Act. We realized that there were a lot of gaps in the Intergovernmental Relations Act, and that is why the Nairobi Metropolitan Service was not able to be scrutinized properly. That is why the Nairobi City County Assembly was not able to provide oversight and to be involved in allocation of budgets to the Nairobi Metropolitan Service in the manner that the Constitution expects of devolved services. And so I want to encourage the Devolution Committee to look at the legacy report that we left and bring further amendments to this Act to give greater effect on transfer of functions. But I want to congratulate the Leader of Majority because he has picked another element in that Act that has been a bit hazy. The Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee, Madam Speaker, was supposed to be the secretariat to the summit, and it was also supposed to be the secretariat to the Council of Governors. But because the governors were better organized, and I think that the inaugural chair, the inaugural chief executive officer of the Council of Governors was a lady. She's now a justice, she's now a judge, and she did a great job in establishing the Council of Governors to an extent where the Council of Governors was almost in competition with the Senate. I do recall, Madam Speaker, in the 11th, 12th Parliament, the chairs of the Council of Governors would make pronouncements which many a times would be at variance with the Senate. And yet the Senate is a constitutional institution that is supposed to represent and defend the interests of counties and their governments. It got so bad, Madam Speaker, that even the chairs of the Council of Governors were unwilling to subject themselves to scrutiny at the Senate. When Senator Halwale was the chair of the Public Accounts Committee, the then governor of Kakamega, who I believed was the chair of the Council of Governors, refused to appear before the Senate. The then governor for Bomet, who at some point served as the chair of the Council of Governors, Governor Isaac Ruto, refused to come to the Senate. And they used public resources to take the Senate to court. Even as we provide a framework, legal recognition for the Council of Governors, I want the committee that will be scrutinizing this bill to put the question to the Council of Governors that out of their legal expenditure, what percentage has been litigation against the Senate? It forms the bulk of the legal expenses of the Council of Governors. Madam Speaker, it is so ridiculous that at some point, governors were required by the Council of Governors to make a contribution for them to file a case against a report that was adopted by this House. I was the chair who tabled that report in this House. It was called the Fiduciary Risks Report. In the Fiduciary Risks Report, we summarized emerging the cross-cutting audit issues that the Auditor General has raised over the years. Because, the Auditor General generates a lot of reports, but many of them can be summarized into probably 20 issues. So we brought the first fiduciary risk report to this House, and amongst the recommendations that were adopted by the House was that all contributions that were made to the Council of Governors was nugatory, was illegal, and therefore the CEOs should be surcharged for that contribution. What did the Council of Governors do? They set up a fund to take the Senate to court. I am glad that along the way, they found that it was a futile move, and then they stopped that pursuit, even though they didn't refund the counties the money that had been put in that fund. The Senate cannot be struggling to go into mediation, to propose 400 billion, to consider whether we should reduce allocations to county governments or not, only for the county governments to use the resources coming from the Senate for litigation. I still feel that we need to decouple the Intergovernmental Relations Agency and the Council of Governors. Ideally, the powerful institution ought to have been the Intergovernmental Relations Agency. And at our last meeting with that entity, when we were in Naivasha, when we were in Eldoret with the Liaison Committee, Madam Speaker, I put it to the chair of the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee that they have been subdued, they have been outshone by the Council of Governors. And indeed, if you look at the strict interpretation of the Intergovernmental Relations Act, they should have been the ones providing secretariat and administrative support to the Council of Governors. But we are where we are, Madam Speaker, and I think that I would agree with the spirit that the IGRTC should be independent, should be separate, should have clear terms of reference. Whether we name it Intergovernmental Relations Agency, or Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee, or Intergovernmental Relations Commission, arose by any other name, smells just as good. So the nomenclature is neither here nor there. What is important is that they need to have clearly delineated functions that will not overlap with those of the Council of Governors. I support that you need to allow the governors to organize themselves. The Council of Governors is supposed to be funded from the Consolidated Fund, and that has been our beef. In the Public Accounts Committee, when we say that contributions to COG by county governments is irregular, it is based in law, because the law says that their expenses shall be drawn from the Consolidated Fund. The audit of those expenses.
Senator Olekina Ledama, what's your point of order?
Madam Speaker, I hate to interrupt my good brother, the distinguished senator from Homa Bay, but I followed his submissions, and I just wanted clarity on a couple of issues. Issue number one, the distinguished senator said that the first CEO of the Council of Governors, who is now a justice in the Court of Appeal, was quite smart and did a very good job and outsmarted the Intergovernmental Relations Agency by setting up the Council of Governors Secretariat. Is the senator in order, knowing clearly that Section 12 of the Act, Section 13, I believe, or 12 of the Act, specifically sets this council, this intergovernmental agency, as a secretariat of the Council of Governors? Is it saying that to commit an illegality is right? It's just an issue of statement of facts. Issue number two, that I just want some clarity from the distinguished senator.
Ledama Olekina, before you proceed, which standing order are you relying on?
105, statement of facts.
Okay, proceed.
Because you see, everything we say here, Madam Speaker, remains in record. I have a big problem with the existing of the Council of Governors illegally.
And I just want to get some clarity from my good friend Senator Kajwang, who was the chairperson of the Committee on Devolution in the last Parliament. And I served with him also in the County Public Accounts Committee. And we agonized on the legality of the Council of... I'm on a point of order. Okay? No, you can't. I'm on a point of order.
Senator Boni Halwale, he's on a point of order. He has to finish.
I have to finish.
Let him finish.
Madam Speaker.
Proceed, Senator Ledama.
The Chief Whip is an old dog. He's been in this house for quite some time.
Senator Ledama,
so he knows that when there is a point
is
of order,
unparliamentary language. Withdraw and
point of order.
retract.
No, it's actually a good word to use. Seriously. It's not a bad word. I agree. He's the one who uses it every day. It doesn't mean that he's whatever. I just mean, so let me just finish my thought. I just want some clarification so that I know whether that illegality can be considered as outsmarting the Secretariat in being able to set up the Council of Governors Secretariat and outsmarting the agency. We are now terming it as an agency, Intergovernmental Relationship. Oh, God.
Senator Boni, wait until the Honourable Senator finishes his point of order.
Madam Speaker, I'm wondering whether my good friend is now losing his memory. He's just been told that I'm on a point of order, just to be patient. So really, if I can just finish what I was seeking clarification, because I'm seeking clarification from the distinguished senator from Homa Bay. And I want to know whether that illegality equates to being smart and how we are going to deal with it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Kajwang, please proceed and throw more light and clarify the issue you've been asked. Senator Boni, what's your point of clarification?
Madam Speaker, this is a house of rules. Because he was on a point of order, I was constrained. I wanted to challenge him on a point of order. So the clarification I would like you to make, is it right for a member to hide in a standing order so as to debate a point when he has already been given an opportunity to debate, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, he's out of order. I might be an old dog, which is a good thing, because the old dog knows all the rules.
Senator Boni Halwale, it is on your own admission of how you've been described, but nonetheless, he has sought a clarification, which is quite in order, and referenced a section in law to distinguish between whether that an act of illegality can be referred to as a smart action. So, Senator Kajwang, it is in order for you to clarify exactly what your submission intended to mean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, indeed, the fiduciary risk report that I've referred to, I was with Senator Ledamo Lekina in drafting it. In fact, it has his footprints all over, because I remember we spent a lot of time with him in retreats, in report writing, and it's a report that my committee hopes to bring back to the House. We pointed out that illegality, and it is for that reason that the House adopted our report and said that those contributions were irregular. Yes, there were irregularities and illegalities by drawing money from the county revenue funds rather than the consolidated fund, which statute requires should be the route through which this council is funded. Indeed, Madam Speaker, we even said that assuming that I was a Secretary General of a political party, and the political party's fund, I am not getting the money that I'm supposed to be getting, should county governments contribute towards the welfare of that political party? No, because in law, political parties should be funded from that fund. And in law, the Council of Governors and IGRTC should be funded from the consolidated fund. But we must give it to those who established the Council of Governors. It's very difficult to build institutions. Even the founders of this House, the founding members of this House, we must give it to them. The National Assembly was in existence. There were structures. The founding speaker, the founding clerk, the founding staff, the founding members of this House had a tough responsibility to give effect to a new provision of the Constitution. It is that ingenuity that I'm talking about on the part of the CEO and the founding team of the Council of Governors. They gave it visibility, gave it credibility, gave it a voice that was louder than the IGRTC, which was supposed to be the bigger institution. And I think that's what I meant by saying they outsmarted the IGRTC. And to date, even with Mary Mwiti as the chief executive officer, you still hear the Council of Governors more than you'd hear the IGRTC. The IGRTC, Madam Speaker, has been led by some very distinguished citizens. The Transition Authority was led by Kinuthia Wamwangi, who still continues to be a voice of reason and a voice of wisdom when it comes to devolution. There was Professor Karega Mutai, a man who, from where I come from, Madam Speaker, we hold him in very high regard because he came to Mfangano Island in an area that didn't have schools, and he established a school which today we call Professor Karega Mutai School. And it's right in the middle of Mfangano Island, and it's an area and a school that has provided opportunities to a lot of people, a lot of residents of Mfangano Island. Currently, Kithinji Kiragu is the chair of the IGRTC, and we are happy that it is during his tenure that they've brought this amendment for us to have clarity. Madam Speaker, let the devolution committee ask the Council of Governors why we cannot find a way of acting in a complementary manner. Why is it that we have always been acting in a competitive manner? And yet, ultimately, those with the responsibility in this constitution to defend and protect devolution, counties and their governments, is this Senate. Even as we give effect and as we separate and give funding arrangements for the Council of Governors, let them not imagine that they shall be in competition with the Senate, and let them not imagine that they'll be superior to the Senate. Madam Speaker, the Intergovernmental Relations Agency has a lot of work to do as far as assets and liabilities are concerned. Madam Speaker, this job, they started during Kinuthia Wamwangi's time. It is still stuck. Counties have done verification of assets and liabilities, but the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee has not concluded this report. And that's why I wonder, if we make them an agency, are they going to move faster than they were moving when they were technical committee? Costing of functions and transfer of functions, moving too slow, Madam Speaker. Nowadays, we just bandy figures around on what counties should get, but we are not quantifying the cost of providing those services. This is something that this agency ought to have done, and we hope that they will do it now that we have provided greater clarity. Transfer of functions. Nairobi City County is one example of transfer of functions gone bad. Hundreds of billions of shillings were sunk in NMS. Today, we don't know how that money was used. Madam Speaker, I recently demanded from the Auditor General that the report of the presidency, the Auditor General's report on the presidency, be tabled in this House. And Madam Speaker, I was assured that it would be brought here. Because the expenditure of the NMS was hidden under the presidency. So when we talk to the governor for Nairobi, the governor tells you that it can only account for 30% of the revenues we sent. The other 70%, it tells us to go to the presidency. Those are issues that this agency ought to have resolved. Dispute resolution, Madam Speaker. We are getting the third impeachment motion coming to this House without anticipating the matter. But, Madam Speaker, we take judicial notice that there could have been some decisions in Meru County. What role has this entity that is mandated to resolve disputes in county governments and between county and national governments done to save the people of Meru from these perennial and seasonal impeachment motions? So, Madam Speaker, we must demand.
Senator Kajwang, you will have 5 minutes when we resume debate. And honorable senators, it's now 6:30 p.m. Time to adjourn the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until Tuesday, 3rd September 2024 at 2:30 p.m.